Welcome, everyone. We got a very good meeting coming up today. Great panel we're going to be listening to. So a lot of great information and look forward to it. We'll start with introductions. I'm Dale Stein, Chair. Erica?
Erica Goodman, voting member.
Dave?
Dave Grass, Vice Chair and voting member.
Darren Hickling, voting member.
I'm not sure. Scott, you on yet? Snap. Turn it over to you, Brian.
Sure. Thank you very much, Dale. And welcome everybody to the meeting here today. So if this is your first time attending a state committee meeting, I'm going to go through our advisory members and do a roll call and then go through our staff, and then I'm going to welcome all of our guests and attendees. Unfortunately, we won't be able to go through a full roll call. But with that, I'd like to start with Markets. Who's here from Ag and Markets today? You know, Tim Sweeney said he couldn't make it today. Anyone else from Ag and Markets like to introduce themselves?
Hi, Brian. This is Kelly Young. I'm the new Director of Ag Development, and I'm really interested in your discussion today. So thanks for allowing me to join.
Oh, welcome, Kelly. Thank you so much. Okay, moving on. Cornell Cal.
Hi, it's Julie Suarez. How are you?
Hi,
Nice to
Julie.
see everybody
Welcome.
today. I just wanted to listen in as well. Really excited. Thanks for the opportunity.
Wonderful. Nice to see you as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Cornell Cooperative Extension. Okay, Conservation District Employees Association.
Hello, this is Dustin Lewis, President of the Employees Association and District Manager for Saratoga County Soil and Water.
Welcome, Dustin.
Thank you.
Anyone else from CDEA? Okay, DEC. Who's on from DEC?
Good morning, Brian. Sarah Latessa's on.
Hey, Julie Milan,
Good morning.
Region 7 too.
Good morning, everybody. This is Asim Kumar.
Good morning, Sarah, Julie, and Asim. Department of Health.
Paul Kazmarzik. Morning, Brian.
Good morning, Paul. Anybody joining you, Paul, from DOH?
Not today.
Okay, welcome. Department of State.
Good morning. This is Stephanie Wojtowicz from the Local Waterfront Revitalization Program.
Good morning, Stephanie. Welcome.
And it's Kate Holgo as well from the LWRP program.
Good morning, Kate. Welcome. SUNY ESF.
Good morning, Brian. This is Steve Shaw.
Good morning, Steve. Welcome.
Thanks.
Anyone from USDA NRCS? Blake let me know that he'll be joining around 10:30, so we should have Blake here very soon. Okay, thank you so much. Now I'll go through a quick staff roll call. Yes.
This is Scott Ryan. I'm on.
Oh, hey, good morning, Scott. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining. All right, we have a full quorum. Thank you so much, Scott. All right, move on to State Committee staff. Victor?
Good morning, Victor Giacomo, State Committee Regional Field Staff for Western New York.
Good morning, Victor. PJ Emmerich?
Good morning, everybody. PJ Emmerich, Region 2 AEA for the Finger Lakes area.
Good morning, PJ. Scott Fickbone? Scott said I believe he's got a conflict this morning, so do not have Scott. Ryan Cunningham?
Hey, good morning. Ryan Cunningham, State Committee, Regional Field Staff for the North Country.
Good morning, Ryan. Ron Bush.
Good morning, Ron Bush, CNP Specialist with the State Committee.
Good morning, Ron. Brendan Jordan?
He's
Hi, good morning, Brendan Jordan. Oh, sorry.
No worries. Thank you, Brendan. Greg Albrecht.
Good morning, Greg Albrecht, Agricultural Environmental Management Program Coordinator.
Good morning, Greg. Jennifer Clifford.
Good morning, Jennifer Clifford, Climate Resilient Farming Program Manager.
Good morning, Jennifer. Ben Luskin.
Good morning, Ben Luskin, Region 5 AEA for the Southeast Region and State Aid to Districts Program Manager.
Good morning, Ben. Bethany Bizdu.
Morning, everyone. Bethany Bizdu, Program Manager with the State Committee.
Good morning, Bethany. Abigail Edwards.
Morning, everyone. Abigail Edwards, Excelsior Fellow for the State Committee.
Good morning, Abigail. Tim Clark.
Yep. Good morning, everybody. I'm Tim Clark. I'm the engineer for the State Committee.
Morning, Tim. Lauren Pazorski. Okay, Pete Lopez. I believe Pete has got a conflict this morning. Okay, well, again, thank you and welcome to all of our participants, our guests today, our Conservation District guests, and our panelists. Looking forward to today's meeting, and we'll be introducing our panelists and our moderator at that point in time. So Dale, that concludes our roll call. Back to you.
Thanks, Brian. Excuse me. Thanks, Brian. Review and approve minutes. Are there any additions or corrections, changes? Motion to approve, please.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We'll go to voting. Erica?
Aye.
Dave?
Yes.
Karen?
Aye.
Todd is here as well, Dale.
Yep, I'm on. I approve.
Approved. Thank you. Correspondence, Brian? Budget update?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. I don't have any correspondence today to share with the group. Do have a budget update since the last time we met. Governor Hochul released her executive budget proposal. I'm going to highlight the Environmental Protection Fund. This information was sent out to all conservation districts and partners back in January, but on January 18th, Governor Hochul's budget was put out, and the budget for fiscal year 2023, the proposed budget raises the Environmental Protection Fund from $300 million to $400 million. That is a very large increase, and as such, I'll highlight a few of the line items that the State Committee administers and conservation districts and partners deliver, and all of which also received an increase in this proposed budget. Starting with the Agnon Point program, increase of $2 million from 18 to 20 million. This does include $2 million for the Cornell IPM program, as well as $500,000 for the Cornell Cooperative Extension of Suffolk County for the Long Island Nitrogen Plan program, and $250,000 for Cornell's PMEP. Up $4 million to $15 million for Soil and Water Conservation District Aid. That's an increase, like I said, from 11 million to 15 million, an increase of 4 million. Again, that Conservation District Aid program provides vital capacity to our conservation districts to support the programs and projects at a local, regional, and statewide scale. We'll hear a little bit, I think, today about how some of that the program funds for state aid have been able to extend districts' reach into communities as well as in rural environments. Moving on from there, a little over 17 million for invasive species, which includes 120,000 for the Cornell University Plant Certification Program. 22 million for the Oceans and Great Lakes Initiative. Again, we do propose funding through that initiative and administer our EBM program funding through that line item. $4.8 million for the New York State Climate Adaptation, including $200,000 for the Wood Products Development Council, which I think you've heard me talk a lot about climate initiatives over the years, and certainly this line item helps support climate adaptation as well as our forest products. $17.5 million for the Climate Resilient Farming Program, which includes up to $500,000 for the Cornell Soil Health Program. That is an increase of $13 million in this proposed budget. I think that really speaks to the ongoing increasing need for climate mitigation adaptation funding to help support our farms in their efforts to reduce their emissions and also be more resilient in the face of a changing climate. Certainly the Climate Resilient Farming Program has been identified as a key resource to help farmers address emission reduction through the CLCPA, the Climate Action Council's Ag and Forestry Advisory Panel. So we're very pleased to see that proposed increase, and also pleased to see an increase to the funding that supports our land-grant institution, Cornell University, in their soil health programming. $25 million for Water Quality Improvement Program administered from DEC, and $17 million for the Waterfront Revitalization Program administered by Department of State. Our conservation districts participate in both of those programs as well. So really exciting budget. Negotiations are ongoing, and we should have an approved budget by our April 1st deadline. And I will also mention that the budget was friendly to state operations as well, and the hope that through this budget, if approved, we'll also start to build some capacity within ag and markets as well to support these programs. So to that end, and actually it's a good segue, I also have a quick staffing update to give to the committee here today. And that is, recently we received approval to backfill the data management GIS specialist position. That is the position that Jason Kokinos vacated back in the summer. And that opening, that solicitation is currently out right now and expires quickly, expires February 20th. We did send that notice out to all of our conservation districts if they know of anybody who might be interested in that position. We sent that meeting notice out, and we can also, make sure that, folks are aware of that, and it can be accessed through our HR webpage and a link to State Jobs New York. So very excited. Hopefully we'll be able to fill that vital position here soon. Any questions or comments? Okay, Dale, that's all I have for budget update and staffing update.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, the budget is a very big change. We'll see how things go and implementation, and get the word out to farms on the additional CRF money. Next on our list is the Soil Health Climate Resiliency Act. And again.
Okay. I think we're just going to switch presenters here, and I believe Abigail's going to share her screen. Okay, thank you so much. I wanted to also start off today's meeting with an update and some news on the New York State Soil Health and Climate Resiliency Act. I believe this act was signed into law just the following day from our last state committee meeting. So it was signed into law on December 22nd. So we did not have an opportunity to talk about it in December, and this is our first meeting since. So I certainly want to give everybody an update on this legislation. Next slide, please. Okay, so as I mentioned, this was signed by Governor Hochul on December 22nd, 2021. It passed the Assembly on May 25th, 2021, passed the Senate on June 8th of 2021. And this Soil Health and Climate Resiliency Act really provides a framework and a structure, if you will, that builds on, current momentum and programs and opportunities related to soil health, on agricultural lands, and certainly also related to climate resiliency and agricultural lands. The key components of this legislation starts with definitions, so it defines what the state means by soil health and many other terms that are included throughout the legislation. It also declares that soil health is the policy of the state of New York. It includes the Soil Health Initiative, 151M, as well as the Climate Resilient Farming Initiative, 151N, and also the Soil Health Research Initiative, 151O. So, next slide, please. So the Soil Health Initiative, at its core, directs the Department of Ag and Markets in cooperation with the committee to develop efforts to promote and encourage soil health in urban, suburban, and rural communities. Doing so by minimizing soil erosion and sedimentation, managing and optimizing soil health to mitigate and adapt to climate change, improving infiltration rates and water holding capacity, managing healthy cycling of soil nutrients, and also directs the department and the committee to conduct stakeholder meetings and present opportunities for public comment through current partnerships, as well as new partnerships, including historically marginalized producers, not-for-profits in both the conservation and environmental fields, as well as the environmental justice community. It directs us to engage with stakeholders virtually whenever possible, and as I mentioned before, make sure that these stakeholders are at the table as we continue to advance programs related to Soil Health Initiative. Also establishes appropriate voluntary standards and objectives for soil health and quality. So that is a little bit different. That's a little new to this legislation above and beyond what we're currently doing. Next slide, please. Okay, the Climate Resilient Farming Initiative directs the department in cooperation with the State Soil and Water Committee to encourage ag producers in urban, suburban, and rural communities to reduce the effects of farming on climate change through the promotion of best management practices for climate mitigation purposes, as well as soil health and soil resiliency, as informed by state policy, USDA NRCS standards and technical specifications, as well as research conducted by New York State institutions of higher education. It states that BMPs for this purpose shall be approved by the New York State Soil and Water Conservation Committee. The Climate Resilient Farming Initiative also directs that it be coordinated with the Agricultural Environmental Management Program for the state of New York. Next slide, please. The Soil Health Research section. It states that we shall make practical information from soil health research to ag producers available in both urban, suburban, and rural communities with the goals of increasing the percentage of farmer adoption who utilize soil health practices, as well as promoting the scientific understanding of soil health and carbon sequestration. So really adds to our ability to perform vital research and testing services, monitoring and quantifying our benefits related to soil health, but also very importantly, directs us to make sure we get that information out to producers in applied fashion and for increased adoption of those practices. Next slide, please. And finally, the Act also allows the committee and the department to coordinate district participation by, like I mentioned before, adding to Soil and Water District Law declaring that soil health and climate resiliency as a policy of the state. Also gives the committee and the department the ability to coordinate and improve the participation of several districts in support of soil health and climate resilient farming. There are a couple of chapter amendments that were just recently approved by the legislature to help the implementation of this act. Those chapter amendments awaiting signature by the governor states that the commissioner and the State Soil and Water Committee are each empowered to promulgate such rules and regulations and to prescribe such forms as each shall deem necessary to effectuate the purpose of the chapter. So essentially to help with the implementation of this legislation. The legislation wording is very general, and the department and state committee will promote and encourage the adoption of soil health and climate resiliency practices. So by empowering both the state committee and the department to promulgate rules and regulations, we can add some more details on how exactly we should go about doing that. It also changes the effective date from what would have been retroactive to July of 2021 to 180 days from the passage of the bill. So that would be approximately around June 22nd. Next slide, please. But of course, there's a lot of current work. There's a lot of effort that is already ongoing in the state of New York. So I think, we are already meeting the spirit and the intent of this act. So just to remind, the committee and our districts and inform some of our partners here on the line today that this fits very well within current committee and department initiatives, such as the Climate Resilient Farming Program, cost share opportunities that are actively administered by the department and committee, actively promoting and providing cost share for the implementation of greenhouse gas reducing practices as well as adaptation practices. Certainly the Ag Environmental Management Program and the expansion to address climate change certainly is an underlying framework that gives us a really good foundation. The Agnon Point Source Abatement and Control Program, we know that we fund a tremendous amount of acres of cover crops and other soil health practices for water quality purposes. I mentioned before the State Aid to Districts program, which provides funding for district capacity with technical reimbursement, but also provides project funding and financial assistance and performance measure funding that can help build capacity and also have districts implement programs for the promotion of soil health and climate resiliency. And of course, we are always very much in tune with the opportunity for district engagement, outreach, and technical assistance as well. So moving forward, of course, this legislation, as I mentioned before, also requires that we engage with our stakeholders, and that means our current partners, but also expanding our reach to communities and not-for-profits and others who have a stake in soil health and climate resiliency. And certainly also expanding on our work with Cornell University in the soil health research realm and the outreach and education opportunities that also exist within that. And as I mentioned before, it directs us to promote and encourage soil health and climate resiliency, not just in our rural lands, but also in our urban and suburban lands. So we will also be, looking at ways that we can enhance our capacity to support urban and suburban agricultural assistance. And I think that's what a large part of today's meeting is about, to find out where we currently are with some really excellent and expanding district programs, and then also begin a dialogue on how we can expand our reach. And of course, the soil health standard in the legislation means that it shall be appropriate to the, to geographical differences and similarities. Also looking at inherent soil properties and different cropping systems. And, I think that the work that has been done by Cornell University through the soil health program that developed a characterization of soil health in New York State certainly helps to give us a lot of good information so that we can establish such a voluntary standard. Next slide. So I know that's a really brief and broad overview of the Act. We'll certainly put all of the legislation, all the wording in as an appendix to the meeting here today. And, again, even if this Act does not start for another 4 or 5 months, we certainly have a good head start, and we'll continue a dialogue so we can hit the ground running when this Act does go into effect. Any questions or comments? Don't be shy, everyone. If you have a question, comment, please, feel free to take your phone off mute and go right ahead. Okay.
Brian, this is Asim.
Yes, sir.
Could you please provide could you please provide all this money you have spoken about in emails? That would be appreciated.
Sure. The budget proposal, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
We can do that. Yep. And we'll also append that to the minutes as well for the meeting record. Okay, Dale, thank you very much. Back to you.
Great. Thanks, Brian. A lot of changes coming up. The next part of a meeting is our urban suburban soil health panel. Dustin Lewis and Brian are moderators, and I'll let Brian do the introductions.
Thank you so much. All right, just going to get the presentation up here. Thank you again, and I promise this will be the last time you hear my voice for a little bit in today's meeting. Really, I think you're all here to hear the voices of our conservation districts who have been so gracious in lending their support to today's meeting, their time, their expertise. And just want to mention that yesterday, February 15th, by law and by regulation, is the day that all of the annual reports and state aid reports, treasurer's reports are due to the state committee office. So all of our district, panelists had preparing for this meeting and also juggling that deadline to be here today. So just many, many thanks to them for their time. I'd like to introduce Dustin Lewis as well, the Saratoga District Manager and District Employees Association President. He made his introduction a little earlier as well, who will be helping to moderate this session today, helping to track the questions and so forth at the end, but also provide his own input into the process from both a district and a employees association perspective. So before I introduce the panelists, just want a little bit of housekeeping. We're going to go through 5 presentations here today. And if you have questions, please take note of those, jot those down, because we'll do a full questions and answers and comments at the end of the final presentation. A little bit new to us here, if you would like to ask your question verbally, go right ahead. Just please raise your virtual hand by your name. There is a hand feature that will allow you to raise your hand. We'll be monitoring that, and we'll call on you. You can go ahead and ask your question of one or more of the panelists at the end. But also, if you feel more comfortable, please use the Q&A function, which if you go to the bottom right of your screen, there's a chat function, and then there's a Q&A. If you click on the 3 dots, you'll see the Q&A. We prefer that all the questions are asked in there, and we reserve the chat for any issues that might come up technically or whatever. But with that, next slide, please. I'm going to go through a brief introduction to all of our panelists. Again, thanking all of them for their time today. First will be Shino Tanikawa from New York City Soil and Water District. She is the manager. We'll be talking about the urban agricultural and urban soils work that is being done in New York City. Followed by Nick Rowell from Warren County Soil and Water District. He is a technician there who will be talking to us about their program in Warren County and their work in smaller urban environments in both agriculture and soil health. Followed by Mark Berger, Onondaga County Soil and Water District Executive Director, who will be talking about the district's work in and around the city of Syracuse in both urban agriculture and community conservation support. Followed by Kelly Emmerich, Monroe County District Executive Director, who will also be talking about that district's work in and around the city of Rochester in support of urban agriculture and community growers and community gardens. And finally, we'll hear from Mark Gaston and Don Strivic from Erie County Soil and Water District. Mark is the field manager, and Don Strivic is a technician from Erie County to talk about their work in and around the city of Buffalo to support urban agriculture and soil health initiatives. And I think every one of these panelists will be talking about programs at different stages of development, and I think this should spur some really good questions and conversation, and help us as a state committee and a department to think about how we can enhance our services in these areas, to learn from the work of these districts and also extend that reach out across the state. So with that, again, I'd like to welcome Shino Tanikawa from New York City to begin the panel presentation.
Thank you so much, Brian. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shino Tanikawa. I'm actually the Executive Director of the New York City Soil and Water Conservation District. I really appreciate this opportunity to share our work here in New York City. And we are actually going to be pushing the envelope today in terms of what we define urban agriculture here in New York City. Next slide, please. Okay, so just to start off on who we are. The mission of the New York City Soil and Water Conservation District is to conserve, preserve, and protect natural resources, improve water and soil quality, prevent soil erosion and sedimentation, and promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the city. So this is pretty standard across many different soil and water conservation districts across the city. One of the things we'd like to remind people outside of the city is that New York City is made up of 5 different boroughs. Most people think of New York City as Manhattan with all the buildings and paved over surfaces, but we actually do have areas with lots of soil. We have parkland that has soil. We have shorelines like this photograph in Brooklyn and other outer boroughs that have soil. So, and as you know, New York City is a coastal city with more than 500 miles of shoreline. So we have water, we have soil, thus we exist. Next slide, please. Broadly speaking, we have 3 separate programs. We have an environmental education program where we respond to schools that would like to host us in the classroom or help with field trips. And I'm showing this picture of a elementary school group out in the field. We went seining in some water body. I can't remember when this was. So we serve K through 12, but we also work with institutions of higher education. Often we're invited to lecture in the class of undergraduates as well as graduate students, and education also spans adult education as well. There are associations of particular groups. I recently did a presentation to the North Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce. So education really is broadly for all ages and any groups. We talk about soil, we talk about water, we talk about importance of stormwater management. So that's our program for education. Separately, we have a stormwater and green infrastructure program. This is more about working with partner organizations in developing and implementing policies. So it's a lot of desk work and reading reports and reviewing plans by the city and making comments on those plans, but it is an important part of our work. But today's focus is going to be the Urban Soils Institute, which is a partner program with the NRCS soil scientists, as well as the Gaia Institute and many other organizations that are working on urban soils in New York City and beyond. Next slide, please. And here is some of our amazing staff. Tatiana and Igor are actually with us today. Tatiana is the director of the Urban Soils Institute. George is the lab manager and who does a lot of the soil testing. And Igor is also a technician who does the soil testing and workshops on urban soils issues. In addition, we have Rebecca, who does the environmental education program, particularly the New York City Envirothon. And we have Anna, who is a part-time program manager for one of our partnership programs for stormwater management. Without these incredible people, we couldn't get done what we get done with such tiny budgets. So I'm always grateful to our staff. Next, please. So here is where we need you to think about agriculture from a very different lens. Agriculture in New York City is actually a desirable feature of urban landscape because a lot of the city is already paved over and we don't have enough exposed healthy soil surfaces. We actually want farms in New York City, whether it's on the ground or on the rooftops. So many of us consider urban farms to be green infrastructure, something that we want to have more of. They happen to have multiple benefits because they are a source of locally grown fresh food, particularly in communities, low-income communities of color that are considered food deserts. These little farms, and when I say farms, we're talking about full-blown commercial farms on rooftops like Gotham Green and Brooklyn Grange, to little pocket community gardens that are nestled between 2 or 3 buildings. And if you're walking by, you would never know they existed. But these tiny community gardens are also incredible assets that provide locally grown food, fresh food in communities that otherwise do not have access to fresh local food, and communities that lack green spaces and amenities. So it's a wide range of different types of farms that we consider as urban agriculture. And these are definitely community amenities, not only providing fresh food, but also places for clean air and just simple respite. If you live in a neighborhood that is cut off with highways and industrial sections, having these little pocket community gardens, that's where residents can interact with nature directly. And there is myriad of social benefits to having a space like that. It's also a community space that bring residents together in an outdoor, open, safe space. So there are just so many benefits to having these urban farms in New York City. Next slide, please. Just adding a little bit more to the benefits of these green spaces and urban farms. They do infiltrate rainwater that reduces runoff and therefore combined sewer overflow discharges. New York City is under a consent order to manage more than 450 combined sewer overflow outfalls throughout the city. So we have been busily trying to create more green infrastructure in the city, and urban farms fit into this green infrastructure plan. We want more of these farms. Again, it's good for water quality. They do absorb that rainwater and road runoff and take the pollutants out of our receiving waterways. They're also great for ambient temperature reduction. We all know that New York City suffers from urban heat island effect, particularly in the middle of the summer. Having more of these farms is definitely beneficial for the city because these vegetations reduce the ambient temperature. They also, again, provide fresh food where people don't have access. So it's good for food security, not just availability of fresh food, but just available food source when other food sources may become scarce. And providing healthy food, I cannot stress enough, there are so many neighborhoods where you are not able to purchase any fresh produce because everything you see in stores is processed food. So in those communities, having these community gardens and farms are even more important. So all this to say that our perspective on urban agriculture in New York City is that these are beneficial landscape or land uses that we want more of, not something that we have to manage to ensure that they do not pollute the environment. Because from our perspective, urban farms do not pollute the environment. They actually clean up the environment that we have in the city. Also in the city of New York, and this is particularly true for rooftop farms, our building codes and land use regulations are so tight and strict. You cannot be operating anything that pollutes the waterways or the air in the city of New York. So we already have these safeguards in place for farms to operate in a way that do not pollute the air or the water. So we really are trying to create more of these urban farms, whether it's commercial scale or at the neighborhood community garden level. Next, please. So I'm going to hand over to Igor to talk about what exactly we do in terms of Urban Soils Institute and the services we offer. So Igor, please take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak. I'm going to go a little more into the services offered by the Urban Soils Institute. One of our primary services is soil testing, and this part mainly consists of samples that can be sent to us through the mail. Typically, client will send several samples in the mail and fill out a form, describes their site. We offer the soil testing services that you see on the screen, and we also offer a report that explains the results to the person sending it. Takes into account site. One of the purposes behind the soil testing is really to increase the confidence that somebody has to urban agriculture, despite the various contamination present. As Shino mentioned previously, urban agriculture is critical to the function of New York City, especially in low-income communities. However, a lot of folks don't know much about soil, even though they know a lot about it. And our main resource is to both give them knowledge about their soils and also protect them against possible negative side effects that can happen during farming soil, and then how they can soil in an inexpensive and accessible way. So really, one of our goals in our soil testing services is accessible and make them helpful to everybody who comes to us. Next slide, please. So to reach out to the community and knowledge of soils, one of our more successful events is Free Soil Testing on Governors Island. This type of event consists of a visitor bringing up to 3 soil samples to us. We will screen the samples our XRF analyzer, and we will give them a consultation on what the results may be and how that relates to the site. The consultation also takes into account what they want to do with the site. This program has been very successful, testing where we tested over 500 samples 2020 to 2021, and most of the folks visiting us with samples are people who know very little about urban soils but are eager to learn. 90% of them have never tested their soil before. A lot of them are people that want to farm in their home garden, and also gardens come to us as well. It's surprising how much you can teach somebody in just 10 minutes of talking to them about soil. The amount of people that are legitimately helped by this, incredible. And due to the success of this program, we plan to expand it further and partner with organizations that can expand their platform further and just bring the word out to others, so they can come and get their soil tested. Don't even know these services. Next slide, please.
Igor, I'm so sorry to interrupt. This is Brian. You're coming in a little bit choppy. I'm wondering if maybe you try to turn your video off. Maybe we'll get better bandwidth. My apologies to interrupt you.
I hope everybody was able to hear at least most of what I said. I apologize.
Yeah, we definitely did hear most. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. As for the site assistance, this is typically a expensive service that we offer that's mostly provided to community gardens, where we will arrive at their site with equipment already, do as much site testing as we can, get as much information as we can about their site and their needs, and we will also take samples back that we can test in the laboratory if needed. So this has been very helpful for especially pre-COVID when site visits were happening up to several times a month in gardens. It has really it has been a really helpful experience for the community gardens that were helped by it. And that's all I have. So thank you so much.
And that is the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for this opportunity once again.
Thank you, Shino and Igor, so very much, and really appreciate that. I think we're gonna do questions at the end. I had mentioned using the Q&A function for that earlier, but actually, so that we all can see the questions and we can monitor those, let's use that chat box instead. I think we're all a little bit more used to using that. But thank you so much, Shino and Igor, and I hope you'll stay on at the end of the presentations to help answer any questions. Really appreciate it. Okay, next we have Nick Rowell from Warren County Soil and Water District. Take it away, Nick.
Excellent. Thank you for having me. Thanks for the introduction, Brian. Yeah, I'll introduce myself. My name is Nick Rowell. I'm the Natural Resource Specialist for the Warren County Soil and Water Conservation District. I've been with the district now for 10 years and continuing forward. Next slide, please. So a little bit about Warren County. I figure I'd give a quick overview. We're a pretty diverse county, but in the southern part of our county, you'll see that red area. Those are our urbanized areas. That's actually our MS4 communities. We have 5 MS4 communities, fully encompassing the city of Glens Falls, major portion of Queensbury, and then heading north through Lake George. In the city of Glens Falls area and some of our urban communities, we also have combined sewer overflows. So we do a lot with stormwater and green infrastructure in these areas, as well as our urban ag programs. And then our county is really divided into 2 major watersheds. To the east, we've got the Lake Champlain Basin, and then to the west, we've got the Upper Hudson River watershed. And a side note, with state aid and increase, we've been able to increase capacity at our district and build our team. So in that photo on the left-hand side, you got Maren. She's our newest technician, which has really allowed us to double our AEM program as well as develop this urban ag program. And we certainly couldn't do it without the support of our board members. And the big Santa Claus looking gentleman in the center is the chairman of our board. That's Mark Brown. And they've been very supportive for us. Next slide, please. So we really kicked off our urban ag program in 2018, although we've worked with our community gardens around the county for years before that. We really solidified it in 2018, and especially working with our Glens Falls community gardens, really our most urbanized area of Warren County. We have 4 major community gardens in Glens Falls, of the larger ones on city lands that we've worked with. And continuing into 2020, we started a program where we really wanted to start with the #1 best management practice, and it was kind of soil health. So we started with the education side of soil health, as well as we were able to provide supplies to these community gardens to better their soil health. We were able to do this through state aid and Part C funding, which was really nice. And this is really how our urban ag program was funded. And then moving forward into 2021, we did some XRF trace metal testing with NRCS, as well as some larger projects in our community gardens. So one of our community gardens was moved. It was actually on private land, and that private land was sold. They were actually on the private land for like 30 years. And it was sold, so the city gave up allowed them to utilize a space in a park, and they really had no resources. So we've got a great working relationship with the City of Glens Falls Water Department through various green infrastructure grants we've worked with them on. And we asked if they could assist us in getting a water source to this community garden. And I mean, before we even realized it, they had put in a frost-free hydrant for us to allow the community gardens to have a water source and be able to grow their gardens. You know, aside from that, we also started some more in-depth project planning. So we have one community garden you'll see in the lower right-hand photo was actually getting flooded quite often. And there was a pond next to it, and there was a pond overflow that you know, wasn't realized. So we were able to fix that pond overflow, but also help them with things like providing compost, providing wood chip walkways to be more accessible to the community gardeners so they could get around without kind of traveling through mud. So these are some of the supplies and materials we've been able to utilize through our urban ag program for these community gardeners. Next slide, please. So going into 2022, we had one community garden in particular that had higher trace metal content testing. So we have really kind of gone into more detail on community garden conservation plans. So we're doing this with all of our community gardens, but one community garden in particular. We're really starting with kind of a phase plan, 3-year plan on soil health and remediation in and around their community garden. And like Shino had discussed, we also deal a lot with stormwater in our urbanized areas. So Glens Falls, some of our community gardens are right on the Hudson River. So oftentimes, as we're assisting them, we'll get additional grants to implement things like porous sidewalk or improved porous parking, as well as bioretentions and rain gardens to assist with the stormwater in and around the community gardens, but also as a benefit to the upper Hudson watershed in that area. So we kind of combine them together as well. And in this 3-year phase plan with this one community garden, we're actually putting soil barriers down. We're putting in very tall raised garden beds, not only for some handicap access, but also to start to remediate some of those soil health issues they're having. Next slide, please. And aside from, you know, some of our community gardens, we also have farms in the city of Glens Falls that are part of our AEM program. And we were able to get some grants through the Upper Hudson River Watershed Coalition. So we were able to apply for the Regional Conservation Partnership Program grants, and we were able to provide high tunnels to some of these urban farms in the city of Glens Falls. So it worked out very well. We also were able to team up with NRCS and do trace metal testing in these areas. And we also have another Part C program we created for educational institutions, which is called our Community Conservation Program. So this farm, being a not-for-profit, also applied for the Community Conservation Program, and they were able to build things like compost piles, get drip irrigation for their high tunnel that was funded through our CPP, and through numerous education events. And the gentleman who runs this small farm in Glens Falls, he also became the conservationist of the year for our district for all of his work in the community. A lot of their excess produce goes to some mental health institutes there, as well as a lot of the homeless shelters in and around Glens Falls. So they've done a ton of work aside from just growing a farm in Glens Falls for the community. Next slide, please. And with our urban ag program and kind of soil health being the forefront of that program, we've been able to pair this program with many grants throughout the years, which has been really nice. Lake Champlain Basin program has been an excellent partnership to get grants through. We've had different programs where we worked with high schools for Soil Savers program. Went to all the high schools in the Lake Champlain Basin, including Glens Falls, and we were able to do a Soil Savers program on soil health. We also received a grant 2 years ago from the National Association of Conservation Districts for Urban Ag, and we did a supporting community agriculture and soil health. So we were able to help a newly established community garden. You can see it on the left. It's right on the Hudson River in an old industrial area that used to be, I believe, a paper mill. So we did a lot of soil testing there, trace metal testing, and our community gardens really took to cover crops. And you can see about 95% of that community garden that year did cover crops. So that's peas and oats. So I was really proud of that photo. They really bought onto that. We also were able to receive a Soil Health on Market Farms grant where we partnered with SUNY Adirondack, our local community garden, or our community college in Queensbury, which is also just about 1 minute north of Glens Falls. So they've been a great partnership. They have an ag business school that we've done a ton of education with, tons of workshops with to support our soil health initiatives as well as urban ag programs. And then currently we are running an agroforestry grant with the college where we are going to develop an agroforestry plan, implement priority sections to that plan, as well as hold 3 workshops on the farm at SUNY Adirondack for their 30 acres of ag fields. And then in the 2 photos in the lower right, you can see some previous workshops we've had at SUNY Adirondack for soil health. We've talked about tarping, integrated pest management, soil testing, no-till, cover crops, so many of the soil health best management practices that we often implement. Next slide, please. So yeah, this is our district. This is our urban ag program. We're very proud of it. It's growing every year. That's our district manager, Jim, on the right in the vest, working with one of our community gardeners to install a shed for a lot of the new tools we were able to provide for them. So that being said, I'm happy to take any questions now or after the presentation. Again, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Nick. I think we'll hold questions to the end. Appreciate it. Again, keep the questions coming in the chat, and when we're also, complete with all the presentations, feel free to ask your question as well if you'd rather do it that way. Thank you. Next, we have Mark Berger, Onondaga County Soil and Water District Executive Director. Take it away, Mark.
Thanks, Brian. Good morning, everybody. I've been with the district for 2 decades. I'm also the program manager for the City of Syracuse's Watershed Ag program. So we work very closely with the City of Syracuse and have since 1994. Next slide, please. So we work in the urban centers. We work oftentimes with the disadvantaged communities, and we really partner in community conservation. This work really started for us around 2006 when, as you see in the pictures on the right, City of Syracuse in August, school district in August, held their teacher boot camps. And the opportunity was get the teachers out on the farms, let them learn where the food is grown and produced, meet the farmers. They go to the city water plant in Skinny Atlas, learn how the water is brought from the lake and transferred through the system to get into their schools and homes and businesses. And then also like where waste products like your sewage treatment plant, how they operate, etc. The whole goal of that was really to educate the teachers so that if there were kids who were not able to ever leave the city, the teachers could bring that knowledge and experience and those photographs back to them. And we are a firm believer that a strong urban core is gonna promote a really strong county, and that's what we try to live by every day. Next slide, please. And throughout our programming within the City of Syracuse and the school districts and the different community groups in the city, we donate oftentimes used office supplies and equipment and gear to programs that really help with job readiness, like Onondaga Earth Corps for the youth in the community. We do an awful lot of tree planting and tree maintenance with groups that do inner city job readiness, like Onondaga Earth Corps. We mentor with the City of Syracuse Fire Department, firefighters of color, and the county executive and his team and cooperative extension. We help mentor youth at 2 city schools that plant fruits and vegetables and raise beds, and they use that food for their own consumption at their houses and in their communities. And being a food desert, that really helps to fill some of the void. We do testing of the soils that are being used for these food growing plots. We do that annually with the Syracuse Refugee Immigration Program. Our staff has hauled literally tons and tons of mulch and soil and compost from the county's Resource Recovery Agency to help get these programs started. We've personally purchased various items. For instance, a school didn't have the money for the new signs they wanted, so we bought personally bought the plywood and all the accessories and the paint that they needed for the kids to redo the signs to help promote their gardens. And these 4x8 signs were put on the sides of the school. So it helps bring pride to the programs that the youth are involved in and builds with their success. Some of our inner city farms, we've actually been able to get them cover crop grants through the various like EPF to help them also participate in good soil health management practices. This gentleman up here on the left, his name's Mike Atkins. We helped to nominate Mike for the USDA Agricultural Advisory Committee on Urban Ag. Unfortunately, Mike didn't get selected. There were over 350 applicants, but it was a great opportunity to work with Mike and his team to help get his nomination move forward. Annually with the county's On-Farm Fest and the Open Farm Tours, we help to pay for and coordinate school buses that leave the inner city schools to get these kids out to our big farms in a rural setting so that they can meet the farmers and experience agriculture on the next level. And we do a lot of community tree planting with the school groups in the community. Next slide, please. And we do this, I think for me, it's been lead by example. When I was at the County Resource Recovery Agency for 2 years, we were very integrated in the inner city school programming. Down here on the lower picture, the chairman of the legislature, highly involved in these programs, our Cornell Cooperative Extension directors highly involved. And on the left, you see our county executive. And so, we've got a lot of community support for these inner city programs. We've talked about the food desert, and we've talked about trying to help grow that food in the inner city. I know when I was hired for this job, one of the questions came up, what's your plan? And I said, I really want to spread conservation across the entire county. We don't need to be focused just on the Route 20 corridor. There's a whole other plethora of growers out there that can benefit from our services and our funding and our experience, and let's take it to them. Really believe that these community groups sometimes just need a catalyst, somebody to believe in them and help move the initiative forward, and we're proud to be one of those catalysts. We see the impact that we're making, and that spurs us on to keep helping so that other people's lives are better. We feel it's a great use of our Part C money, and as everybody knows, the state aid does build capacity. And if we're not having fun and making friends along the way, we're not doing something right probably. So we do make a lot of friends. We have a lot of fun doing this, and I know for us, it's one of the highlights of our year to be in the inner city working with these folks and supporting their needs. Next slide, please. And we think, you look around at the various groups in our communities, and all it takes is people getting involved. We really believe, that with our work with USDA, we could try to bring those resources into these communities for the high tunnel programs and drip irrigation. We see that as a real opportunity for the future. You know, we talk about the state and national level Urban Ag Advisory Committee. We're thinking at the county level, we should be having an Urban Ag Advisory Committee to help steer and grow and guide this initiative forward. A couple years ago, we got an inner city agricultural producer on our board, and I think it's one of the best decisions and recommendations that I've made to our board in years. You know, getting that perspective, knowing what we don't know, knowing what there is we can do further to help is real important. So we love having that diverse perspective. The teacher boot camp, the lady who was inspired that and ran it for over a decade, she retired, and when she retired, that ended. But we really see an opportunity to bring that teacher boot camp back for the inner city, and I'm going to be working with the mayor's office to try to get funding for that. We have a farm that's got a great curriculum. They're a retired teacher, and so it's a perfect hand in glove relationship. We just need to find the funding to get that program reinvigorated. The teachers actually take a week and in August to contribute, you know, their time to that learning effort, and so we really want to get that going again. One of the things that I'm so proud of our farmers for is they'll load their cows up in a trailer and they'll bring them to schools, and we need to do more of that. You know, National Ag Day's coming up in March, and so now is a perfect time to be thinking a month out, how do we reconnect our farmers on the rural land with our kids in the inner city? I've personally done this and think we all could do this, is reading at our schools during National Ag Literacy Day. It's an amazing opportunity. You leave the book behind for the kids. You inspire the kids who go home and talk to their parents about agriculture and food production. And so really think, you know, when we're reaching the kids are going home and reaching their parents. Dare to Dream, the Part B program's been very expensive, or not expensive. It's been very influential. It's not a lot of money, but it's enough money to do a small project. Maybe through the state committee, we could get maybe a Part D fund, and that Part D fund is for helping to support urban agriculture in our communities. Start small, let's see where it goes, build it and grow it. One of my staff members was saying the land bank program that we have in the city, let's get down those vacant and nuisance houses and let's replace them with open space and trees and urban food production. And again, that could be a great spot where our high tunnel programs, you know, really dovetail nicely. And then also, you know, our immigrants in Syracuse is a very immigrant friendly community, and, you know, being able to provide food plots to our immigrants to help them grow the fruits and vegetables that they're familiar with and their custom, so that they can keep their eating and consumption traditions alive, is real important too. Next slide. Oh, that was it. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, and wonderful presentation. Really appreciate it. Hope you'll stay on for questions at the end.
Sure.
Wonderful. Next, we have Monroe County Soil and Water District. Kelly Emmerich, Executive Director, will talk to us about their efforts in Monroe County, City of Rochester. Thank you so much. Kelly?
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for inviting me to talk about this today. I appreciate it. So there seems to be a common theme here amongst districts that have talked already about what our mission is, which is, you know, follows suit for Monroe County to basically manage, protect, and improve our county's natural resources, partnering with the landowners, the municipalities, local, state, and federal agencies, and our local officials to identify any issues and implement conservation projects that protect water quality. We also provide technical assistance and services to manage stormwater in our municipalities here, runoff from farms, stream bank erosion on public and private land, all for protecting our region's lakes and streams, primarily Lake Ontario. And we do also provide educational programs to residents of all ages to encourage good stewardship into the future. So here you can see I just did a wheel of services for 2021. We have a very large municipal assistance stormwater management program in Monroe County. It comprises the majority of the projects and programs here. We contribute probably about 1,000 hours of technical assistance on an annual basis, and it's primarily supported by the Stormwater Coalition of Monroe County. So we do everything related to stormwater, construction site inspections, permit assistance with construction and our MS4 communities, responding to construction and stormwater pond complaints, erosion and sediment control, SWIP review, stream bank and shoreline erosion assistance, training our MS4 staff on construction and post-construction inspections. And then we do offer assistance for floodplain regulations and develop and update brochures and educational materials for our county. We have a very large stormwater training program for contractors, municipal officials, code enforcement officers, and consultants for erosion and sediment control and stormwater design. And in fact, in 2021, we trained 453 people, and 58 of those were from our municipalities throughout Monroe County. We have 25 MS4s here that comprise Monroe County, municipal separate storm sewer systems that are under a permit with the state. And we have, of those, 8 of them are villages, 14 towns. The city of Rochester, the county, which includes their Parks Department, Environmental Services, Health, and Department of Transportation, and as well as one college, SUNY Brockport, that's covered under that permit that we assist as well. We have 29 members of our Stormwater Coalition of Monroe County, because we do have 4 members that are not MS4 communities that still participate in that program here. And then highlighting our staff, we consists of 4 staff members, where together we comprise over 54 years of experience with the soil and water conservation districts, which makes our district very successful in getting conservation on the ground and providing all these critical services to the residents of Monroe County. So next slide, please. So I'm gonna do a little bit different presentation where I'm going to actually talk about our urban agriculture program, our community garden that we implemented at the Asbury First United Methodist Church campus in 2021. Next slide, please. So why urban agriculture here in Monroe County? Well, like I mentioned, we have a very urbanized county comprising of the 25 MS4s that includes the city of Rochester. But we also have had an initiative in 2017 where I was approached by our county legislator, Brew, who sits on our Soil and Water Board as well as the Cornell Cooperative Extension Board here in Monroe County, to promote urban agriculture in a program to the city of Rochester. So in working through that and dabbling into it, we decided, well, let's dip our toes in the pool, so to speak, where let's try a project. We do a ton of green infrastructure work with municipalities, including the city of Rochester. And like Shino mentioned, this is very much in line. I look at it as a green infrastructure project, but you're growing food at the same time. So why not try it and see how it works out? So we made a proposal to the state soil and water under the New York State Part B financial assistance, and it was accepted to implement a community garden in the city of Rochester is where we wanted to focus our efforts. And it was key to have the board support to approve submitting that proposal, and some of the things that were mentioned, like as access to fresh produce by our chairperson, Roland Pickering, and an opportunity to learn about where food comes from and the best way to grow your own food was mentioned by our at-large member, Maureen Loopold. So those two and our other board members, including Legislator Brew, were very supportive of doing this project. And then the project was phased to do planning, design, and installation at the church campus over a 2-year period, which some of that was reasoning was because 2020 COVID hit and it kind of held us back from moving forward. Next slide, please. So when we put our proposal in, we didn't have a location. We knew that we wanted to do a community garden, and we knew that we wanted to make sure that it was within the city limits. We, you know, being an urbanized county, we did want to focus our efforts within the city. And you can see in the picture on the right, the aerial photograph, the blue outline is the outline of the city of Rochester. Just north of that is Lake Ontario, and then the body of water just to the right or to the east, so to speak, is Irondequoit Bay that drains to Lake Ontario, and then that brown-looking river cutting through the city of Rochester is the Genesee River. So we knew we wanted to focus our efforts there, and we were able to select our location based on a high interest from some volunteers in starting a community garden at the Asbury Church, and in that location highlighted in green right there, and also shown in the aerial on the top, where we had a lot of space to actually implement a raised bed garden. I know Shino mentioned that too. Space can be a problem. I knew that we weren't going to get into rooftop gardens at this point with Part B money. Like I said, this was just a dabble to get our feet wet, to get going. Next slide, please. So our office handled everything in conjunction with the church, but including design. The design that was settled on was doing 10 8x4 by 12-inch deep raised garden beds, as you see highlighted in green here. There's 10 of them numbered, and then that triangle looking piece, we actually eliminated 2 of the garden beds and worked with them and encouraged them and talked them into doing a pollinator garden to add to the feature of the community garden and help with the produce production. Next slide, please. So our technician here, Jim Saratoga, led the charge on this and worked through, did a lot of research on what method would be used to propose this to the garden team at the church. So there was a square foot gardening method chosen, which is basically how many plants can you plant per square foot. It was very simple to create a small, orderly, and productive garden. You basically take the bed and divide it into 1-foot squares. So each of our beds had 32 squares to plant. Pretty easy, simple, not overthinking it. And then the benefits, you know, are that it's a fast setup. You get a lot of high yields. There's not a lot of weeding because everything is put in close together, which requires less maintenance. And you're not wasting any space. And we didn't really worry about compacted soil because we were doing raised beds. So, but that is a benefit if you're doing it in the ground. Next slide, please. And then the planning started. So we knew what method we were going to use. And so then there needed to be a way to how are we going to start? Are we going to start some of the seeds, some of the early vegetables that really should be seedlings going into the beds? Let's get those going. So Jim planned out a seedling schedule, and we purchased some grow light systems with the Part B money. And the Asbury Dining Center, their daycare, and their volunteers all decided to grow starter plants for the project. So those were started, but then the planning of the individual raised beds had to be laid out as well. And you can see there where the arrow's pointing to is Jim's plan for the bed numbers and what produce would go into each of those beds. And so that produce has to be accompanied by companion planting planning, which what vegetables grow well with other vegetables where there's a symbiotic relationship between those where they benefit from each other. Next slide, please. And then the district handled all the procurement and purchasing of all the supplies. So in 2020, we had purchased all the lumber, thankfully, where it was actually affordable. And we constructed all the garden beds ourselves in 2020 with the lumber, and then we delivered them late fall, October, to the actual site so that they could be ready for placement come spring of 2021. We purchased seeds for anything that we didn't start in a grow light system, any garden equipment like a hose and some other things, the compost and topsoil. We ended up purchasing some pepper plants because some of our seedlings didn't grow very well, where we were counting on those volunteers to produce those seedlings, and we'll talk about that later too. And then we did purchase and do the planting plan for all the flowers and shrubs that would be placed into the pollinator garden. Next slide, please. So I'll talk, I got a lot of pictures to show you of the actual construction of the garden. So this actually took place all in 2021. So next slide, please. So here, based on that plan we saw earlier, the beds were laid out with the garden team that was put together at the church. And that was done in early April of 2021 to line it up exactly how we had it laid out in the plans. Next slide, please. Then came the compost and topsoil delivery. And then of course, as soon as it was delivered, it snowed in April of 2021. So obviously didn't have an impact on our project, but Jim placed this slide in here to see that you never know when you're going to get snow in upstate New York. Next slide, please. And then in May, early May, because we had a schedule we had to meet to get the plants into the beds, began the compost, topsoil filling of all the beds. We purchased wood chips and edging to create the garden outline and also keep the weeds down and make it easier for folks to walk in there. And as you saw earlier, it is ADA compliant. And that was something that was discussed with the church that was necessary for them to make sure that folks that visit the garden that are in wheelchairs could get through each of the beds. So that all took place between May 10th and 13th. Next slide, please. And then the pollinator bed was built. You see the little triangle there in the front of the garden area right off the parking lot. And then the first seedlings were planted on May 21st of 2021. You can see them being placed in their squares. You can see how the beds are divided into those 1 foot squares. And so the plants are placed within those. Next slide, please. And then from there, all the rest of the seedlings were planted by early June of 2021, including some opportunity to build some trellises, as you see there. And that was instrumental in working with this garden team there. They were very engaged. They were very enthusiastic about it. They were very open to ideas and suggestions like the pollinator garden. So making it as aesthetic as possible was important to them as well. So they did build those on their own. Next slide, please. And so by late June, we already had some great growth in our beds, which was pretty impressive. We had, you can see the broccoli and the peppers in the top right and the bottom there came up pretty quickly in the garden beds. You know, we're attributing that to the good soil and compost that we used and the seedlings that were of good from a local nursery. Everything was purchased locally. So all of our local flowers, shrubs, and vegetable plants and seeds were all purchased by our local nurseries that we work with quite a bit. Next slide, please. So the garden's all planted, the trellises are all in, the pollinator garden is starting to bloom there on the left. We created an educational sign, and that was one of the pieces that we offered, suggested to the team, and they went for it, and we worked with them to create that sign, and I have pictures of that later on. But then they even created a little stone structure there that you can see in the front of the pollinator garden that somebody painted and placed there. So they really took ownership of it to the point where they actually did a garden dedication on June 27th. And you can see the folks that are there, and they did a blessing of the garden. There was a whole song dedicated to this garden. Next slide, please. So here's the garden in July in full bloom. We grew 4 varieties of tomatoes, 6 varieties of peppers. There was lettuce, chard, kale, various herbs that they wanted for their kitchen, green beans, broccoli, cucumbers, carrots, eggplant, and 3 varieties of squash. Next slide, please. And then by late August, you can see that they've been harvesting things all along as they're ready throughout the summer, but they still had a lot of produce. So Jim did some calculations based on some research that he did, and he figured it produced up to about 150 to 300 pounds of produce for the community. Next slide, please. This was the sign that we created. Again, this was suggested by the staff here. Jim Saratoga and Jacob Kearney, who is our conservation program specialist, both created this sign in conjunction with the garden team, and it was manufactured by our Monroe County DOT sign shop for the project. And you can see it here placed in the pollinator garden that's in full bloom. You can see some black-eyed Susans and some purple coneflower, which are great pollinator plants that were chosen for that. Next slide, please. Our project funding, like I mentioned, was based out of New York State Part B. It covered a lot of our staff time, mostly in doing all the planning, the sign creation, the design, the coordination, and building the beds. Themselves was quite a bit of staff time, and this was using the Soil and Water Conservation District hourly rate recommendations that they send out every year. And then it covered a lot of the all the supplies and materials that were put into the project for the church. So we used $12,000 over 2 years for the Part B, and from the Part B, and the total cost was about $19,000. Next slide, please. Some challenges with urban agriculture, and I think this was mentioned already by Shino in the beginning. City codes are definitely different than when you're working in a rural community. When it comes to implementing any type of project, specifically to agriculture, they actually have a permit specific to community gardens. So we were required to get a permit for that, and our office handled all that on behalf of the church. And then originally the project entailed putting in rain barrels to harvest rainwater and use to water the garden, and it was denied by the Historic Preservation Board in the city. They wouldn't allow them. So that was something new that we hadn't thought of going into the project, that would even come up as being a problem. And then raised gardens can be expensive. Similar to green infrastructure, there's no green infrastructure project that we've ever done that hasn't been expensive. So I look at this the same. Anytime you're especially building a garden up with lumber, the cost of the supplies and the staff time to build it, the cost of the plants, things like that, it can get costly. And then another challenge that we were able to overcome was in the beginning, proposing this to do this project is, working on changing that perception of what agriculture is as seen by soil and water conservation districts, and specifically the boards, and what the historic agriculture programs and projects that have been conducted by soil and water, and shifting that to city agriculture. Next slide, please. Some opportunities that came out of the project. We were able to tie in a lot of education for youth. So the Asbury Daycare and Sunday School and the parishioners all grew those starter seedlings. Here you see the kids with the grow lights growing the seeds. And then the Summer Vacation Bible School uses the garden and utilize it already as a focal point for learning with the theme Be a Seed. So teaching them how to grow their own food, etc. And then another opportunity was the education for the public. We took the initiative to partner with our Cornell Cooperative Extension Master Gardener to give a presentation on garden maintenance. So that was open to the public. And that was, everything from how to care for it, talk about diseases, pests, weeding, watering, when to harvest, seasonal care, things like that. So that worked out well. And that was actually right on site. We did that presentation at the garden. Next slide, please. And then, Mark had mentioned this a lot, and Shino mentioned this about food deserts. So we were able to produce so much produce with this garden that the Asbury Church couldn't use it all. So we were able to distribute the food in underserved communities and feed the hungry. So Asbury Dining and Catering Center provided lunch to the public. And they do a grocery bag ministry, which they planned on doing all along, where they package the produce and then they give it to people to take home. But they had so much produce that they actually had to share it with other food pantries throughout the city of Rochester. And I put those on the map there on the left. You can see that they're strategically throughout the city. The AME Zion Memorial Food Pantry is actually across the river. So it's not like they were all on top of each other, but those locations, specifically even that People's Pantry, is the largest grocery service in the city of Rochester. They do delivery and pickup for feeding the hungry, and they've really been focused on helping those that lost their jobs in 2020 with giving them food due to COVID. Next slide, please. The key, I don't know if this is a lessons learned or key tips for doing gardens. I know that Jim and I are on the same page with this, that leadership and ownership is key with doing these projects. I guess with any project, but something that has to be built and maintained forever really needs a team of people that are into it, that own it, that take the lead on wanting to do it. And so that engagement of the volunteers and garden team is what really made this project successful throughout the planning, design, and construction. I don't think that if you didn't have that, I think it would have been difficult to move this project forward. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we did have some issues with the viability of some of the seedlings that were started that we were planning on using and had to purchase instead. But we still look at it as it was a learning opportunity for them as well. They had never done it before. So even though we couldn't use the seedlings, they still got the opportunity to try and grow some of them. Next slide, please. Benefits, I think we've covered these a lot in the other presentations. Community is, access to that fresh, better tasting food, and then improved dietary habits, engagement in the healthy outdoor activity. We felt that a lot of those folks that were involved really learned a lot of skills to be able to produce their own food. And then creating those social ties and better feeling of community, not only within just that community, but the other communities that they shared their produce with. And the conservation side of things, the pollinator garden that we put there provides that additional habitat and important habitat, improving the ecology of that area. I don't think you really see pollinator gardens too much unless you're doing green infrastructure in the cities, and then improved rain infiltration into the garden beds. Even though they're raised, they do take in a lot of rain without any leaching. Next slide, please. So future of urban ag in Monroe County, we're going to continue to further our partnership with Cornell Cooperative Extension for outreach in the city. They actually have a staff position for an urban agriculture coordinator. So the way I see it with their director is that they'll be doing the outreach, and then the district would provide more of the construction implementation, boots on the ground component. And then continue to implement these raised garden beds and maybe expand into other types of urban agriculture. Maybe do some composting projects. It would be really cool to do a rooftop garden. I know there's a lot more that goes into that. And maybe doing some raised beds for balconies and things like that, just to expand the program. Probably try and focus our efforts in actual food desert areas. Shino had mentioned those early on. So looking at those areas within the city and see if we can focus a project there. And select an area that actually allows rainwater harvesting. So work with the city early on to see what areas in the city would actually allow for rain barrels or cisterns to be used, because then you're doing stormwater management and then being able to use that water to use on the gardens. And then foster new partnerships, such as the City of Rochester's Department of Rec and Human Services has an environmental education coordinator. The city also has an urban agriculture working group. And then the city just created a food policy council that's big into efforts for food desert areas. So working with those partners to further the program would be important. Next slide. I think that's it. All right, that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Really, really appreciate that presentation. Next we have Erie County. We've moved from New York City all the way west to Erie County now to talk about their efforts in and around the city of Buffalo. Mark Gaston and Don Stribick, take it away.
You hear me all right, Brian?
Just fine, loud and clear.
All right. So yeah, as Brian indicated, really we're at the beginning stages of developing an urban agricultural conservation program. Very similar to a lot of the other districts. Mission-wise, again, I'm not going to rehash what our mission is, but we do have a diverse program. Mainly probably about 60% agriculture related, a lot of stream bank stabilization, municipal assistance, landowner assistance programs. Our stormwater programs are definitely a little smaller than Monroe counties, but we have a diverse plate ahead of us. And our assistance to the urban agricultural community has been limited, we'll put it that way at best. Demographics, again, Western New York, Erie County, Buffalo is our urban hub, probably about 250,000 population-wise. And not only is our demographics diverse, but our urban core in Buffalo, first-ring suburbs, which has sparse agriculture-related issues, and land open to agriculture in the first-ring suburbs, and then more of our rural areas surrounding that, which is where most of our agricultural programs are concentrated. In that area, our agriculture is diverse, dairy operations, production, cash cropping. We've got vegetable farms in our Eden Valley, and even some grapes and such in the lake areas. So agriculture is diverse in the area. So essentially what we're looking at is this is just another leg of our agricultural technical assistance is spreading out amongst all those different types of agricultural operations and spreading into more of the urban area. I'll mention Allison. Not yet. So you can go to the next slide. So in Erie County, although we might not have really provided a lot of agricultural technical assistance, that doesn't stop agriculture from occurring. The community, the urban ag community, has been growing over the years, and there's a number of different agricultural operations within the city limits. I'm going to kind of carve out here. We've got our urban ag folks, but then you also have the community garden folks, and we'll get into that in a second. But essentially, they've been growing over the years. They're taking land, vacant lots where they can, developing niche programs and niche offerings. They ring their bell. They let people know that they're there, and they've got a number of different concerns and issues that they're looking to try to address. So it has been growing. I will say we have participated and provided technical assistance along the way, but it's been limited. We're asked. Some of our partners, Cooperative Extension has provided a little bit more soil outreach and education, especially contaminated soils, heavy metals and stuff like that, to that community. Talked about some raised beds and some of the community garden folks, but we've really let them take the lead on it, and they know what we do and who we are and what we can offer, and they bring us in when necessary. I will say our federal partners have provided a little bit of assistance. They've been able to offer up some funding programs for the hoop houses where applicable, maybe a little bit of irrigation system issues. But really for us, I think the key lead-in to trying to we knew this community was out there. We knew this community was growing. We knew we needed to provide some additional services to them. It really wasn't until we had a new district board member, our Farm Bureau representative, that was given to us from our local Farm Bureau. Allison Dahoney is an urban agricultural operator. So, me as a district manager, I'm thinking, all right, well, we got a new board member. There's the educational component about who we are, what we do, that goes along with a new board member. But then on top of that, we know we need to provide AIM to our board. So number one is, all right, is AIM applicable? How does it apply? What, components? It's always been kind of compartmentalized. So it was definitely a foot in the door, so to speak, and basically saying, okay, now's the time. Let's develop a program. Let's see what's out there. So next slide, please. So really our objectives, whether they be rural or urban, really hasn't changed. Our objectives are still the same. Everyone on these panel discussion has kind of talked about it or touched on in different areas, but of course, water quality, soil health, climate resiliency, water conservation, erosion, sediment control, and stormwater issues. Again, the green infrastructure, we do have CSOs in the city as well, so definitely all viable issues and issues of concerns. So add the next one. So really for us, we're kind of in that phase is, okay, I was always kind of reluctant to say, okay, let's develop a program, because most of our programs are, carrot and the stick, right? Either you got, regulations, in regards to making agricultural be more environmentally compliant. And then, you know, you lead into, you know, cost share opportunities for implementation of best management practices for that larger water quality goal. So for me, it's always been, well, yeah, we can go out to a farm and we can plan for a farm, whether it be rural or urban. Yeah, we're probably going to have to tweak, and only, you know, certain components might be applicable in our AIM planning toolbox. But, you know, ultimately you want to get to implement something, right? You know, so if I go out and plan, ultimately I'm turning this back over to some of the farmers and saying, all right, well, here's what you can do, but I don't have any money to help you do it. So that's always been kind of a limiting factor on my side, and trying to get into some of these programs, and then again, you take into account, you know, some of the scale differences with rural to urban agriculture. You take into, you know, do the BMPs that we would normally or historically try to implement, are those the same types of BMPs that we would implement, and really what fits, you know? And then on top of that, well, what doesn't? I think there's definitely a learning curve there, and I think we're just getting into that learning curve. So all of you panel folks, I'll probably be discussing this with you at one point or another if we haven't already. But essentially, go ahead, Brian, next slide. Really where we're in and where we're going is we're looking at doing a needs assessment. You know, we want to, with a new board member that is in that community, we know there's many folks within that community. It's really talking to them, figuring out what their issues and concerns are and what their needs are, and how we can best formulate a program that tries to address it. And for me, the big, I won't get into that yet, but really that needs assessment. So next slide, please. So Don was working with some of our project partners over a cooperative extension, and essentially they started formulating plans to put together a grant opportunity. And at first, I think Nick talked about this and utilizing this as the NACD grant opportunity was made aware to us. There's a planning side and there's an implementation side. And at first we were looking at trying to do an implementation side. We knew soil health was an issue. Of course, it's always an issue. And we were trying to kind of key in on that and providing some additional workshops, some additional soil testing opportunities, and developing a program around that while we develop a program around that, and other AEM, you know, tools in the toolbox. And after one or two meetings, we quickly realized that there is some definite differences in how folks operate. The community groups versus, you know, ag production versus the community garden folks. Backyard garden.
The backyard garden folks, you know, we're starting to get more refugee folks who, you know, do they even know what contaminated soils are? So we're running into all these issues and how we try to, you know, develop this grant application. And we quickly realized that we need to take a step back and let's submit for a planning grant. So we actually just submitted for this planning grant. We're hoping to hear mid-March whether or not it's going to get funded or not. But really what it is, it's a little bit of seed money that's going to allow us to get some of those stakeholders to the table. You know, we're always available. We have the AIM program. We can always provide technical assistance. We can always be out there. But getting all those folks at the table this is a good opportunity to do that. Right. Good. You can flip to the next one. So again, really, I mean, for us, the needs assessment is going to be working with our cooperative extension. Our core agricultural community within the urban area, Buffalo Go Green is really our agricultural producers that I would, I guess, refer to as our farmers. Then we have Grassroots Gardens, which is really kind of an umbrella organization or a garden collective. And then we have a whole slew of Freedom Gardens, which are essentially your backyard gardeners. And essentially what we're trying to do is to figure out how collectively we can address their issues and needs, and what tools in the toolbox do we have that can address those needs to those specific communities, because they are different. Next slide, please. So for us, it's really, you know, developing that strategic plan, and ultimately for me, it's the carrot at the end is, all right, now that I have AEM implementation dollars, is it something that I want to say, okay, I can carve out a section of dollars from our AEM implementation that says, okay, these are going to be for this dollar amount is going to be for our urban agricultural producers to, you know, digest. Is it going to be Part B funding or Part C funding? You know, those are all, you know, pieces of the puzzle that we really never had, because there's really no funding source that, you know, you talk about throughout all these panel discussions, it was, okay, well, what funding source are we going to use? How are we going to pay for this type of stuff? And really the Part B and the Part C funds, you know, I'm never at a loss for projects. It's just a question of what we're going to do this year and what's the priority and what's ready to go. But the AEM implementation dollars, I think that was really instrumental for us to say, you know, all right, this is definitely an opportunity where at the end of this, not only can we plan, but then we can, you know, we can look at our stormwater and our water control structures. We can look at our composting. We can look at some of these raised bed issues. We can look at soil health, soil contamination issues. And then if there is a problem, then we have a funding source that we can potentially try to address it. So essentially what we're trying to do is to develop a program to do that and to strategically do that.
So I just want to add that in the previous slide, we have a principal planning partner with the Cornell Cooperative Extension of Erie County. We do feel that their relationship is integral to our delivery of a successful program, because we usually lean on them for the education and teaching components of a full-rounded program. So, and our extension's actually been trying to do a strategic plan effort and seek funding to carry that out, and they haven't been successful. So this opportunity to NACD really is going to collectively meet the intent of the extension of the district to prepare strategic plans, not only independently for organizations, but also will be inclusive in each other's plans relative to carrying out this program. And relative to that, I mean, $10,000 isn't a heck of a lot of money. So the district is able, especially through its AIM work, to use that as matching dollars. And we're able to sprinkle the NAC dollars over to extension and to, like Mark say, offer some incentives to our core planning partners in this effort. So I think we'll get the grant, and I think it's going to work out well to do that needs assessment. That's it.
All right, thank you so much, Don, Mark. And thank you to all of our panelists. Just absolutely tremendous programs and projects that you talked about today, and so many opportunities, so many thoughts, you know, on how we can expand our reach and you know, really, I think I liked, you know, Don, how you just talked about it strategically, you know, develop programs and opportunities. So, you know, I think we're going to kind of creep a little bit into the lunch hour, which I think is totally fine. I know that there's a couple of questions in the chat, but also I want to turn it over to Dustin Lewis, CDEA president, who, you know, I'm sure has some questions and some thoughts of his own on behalf of the Organization of Conservation Districts. And also we will get to the questions in the chat, so keep them coming. So Dustin?
Thank you, Brian. I wanted to thank everybody that presented today. They were great presentations. I think it's a very good example of what districts do and how districts adapt to both the changing environment that they're in, but also to, you know, each district is different. whether it be landscape, whether you've got urban ag or, you're mostly non-urban or you've got mostly forestry. Districts seem to rise up to meet any need that occurs. And the use of that Part C money and Part B money that people are talking about, I think has been well demonstrated here by districts, following what their board sees and what they see as the need and putting the money to work. So I think it's, good on you for all the work that everybody's done. We'll just dive into some questions here. I know there was quite a few questions for Shino that were answered in the chat there, talking about victory gardens and such. I think the first question that was not already answered was for Warren County, for Nick. If you guys have had any concerns or comments about PFAS in the Glens Falls area, or the thoughts of possibly having PFAS in the water for some of these community gardens or soil issues. Is there anything that's come up for you guys?
It is not, no.
Okay. Figured because you're using municipal water for that one.
Yes, it is
tree that was
municipal
installed.
water, yep.
Okay.
All
So
of our
I
community
think,
gardens are.
okay. I think a lot of the discussions so far have focused on community gardens and community ag, and some of them have really leaned on a lot of partnerships that some of the counties have, is talking about whether it's cooperative extension to kind of get out there and get yourself known, or whether it's working with your municipalities, and working to get municipalities to assist with either a water supply or, equipment needs. Is that something that some of your districts have leaned on, was the municipalities and some of their, I won't say expertise, but abilities, equipment wise, and also maybe, getting materials?
Yeah, I would like to say we lean on our municipalities heavily, from trucking in wood chips for those community gardens to trucking in supplies for us, as well as putting in the water lines for us and tying into their municipal system at no cost to us or the community garden, which was really nice. So we certainly lean heavily on our municipalities.
Anyone else want to add? All right. There's a lot of discussion on the Part C funding and the Part B funding. I know a lot of you guys discussed it. One that I didn't hear a lot of specifics about how you guys funded projects. I'm sure you're using Part C and state aid. Is there other sources that you guys have reached into to fund some of these projects?
We actually use Part B. So Part B pays for our soil technician, and he wasn't able to join us today. And so we have George, who's the person who's supported by Part B funding, and Igor, who's supported out of our general operating fund. And the rest of it is just through partnerships who can offer technical assistance, but we do have in-house technical expertise as well. So we've been able to do a lot of stuff without needing cash resources. But Part B has been the critical funding source for us.
That's great. And I think, as Brian said earlier in the meeting today, with the possibility of increased state aid, it's good to show that it's being used appropriately at the county level, and to good results. Let's see, just checking the chat to see if any more questions have come up. You guys explained everything very well, which is probably why there's not a ton of questions. I don't see any hands raised.
Brian and the state committee. Hey, this is Mark. This is Mark. Sorry.
Yep.
This is Mark out in Erie County. I guess my question is, seeing how, our EPF funding, is there the potential that there might be an additional funding track for the climate resiliency or sub-track? I guess that's what I'm looking at is this something that we're looking at for the future as to fulfill some of the soil health and the new legislation that was just passed?
Yeah, Mark, that's a great question. Thank you for that. And Also, back in December, we heard a lot about the Finger Lakes counties and the cover crop implementation they did, through that support from DEC. That was just, one example of, our effort and our reach in rural communities and farming at a larger scale. But certainly, Mark, the legislation that just passed, gives us more of a framework for urban and suburban agricultural support. Certainly, as we've been discussing, over the last few months, and certainly we'll do the discussion about how we can lend more support to disadvantaged communities and historically, marginalized producers. That is also very much a focus of this legislation with all of our climate work across the state to the CLCPA. So I see with, definitely want to have a lot of discussion in this format and many others about what we can do to expand our climate resilient farming program. Certainly expanding the scope of our current program will be very important to help our climate goals, but also we have an opportunity to really, reinvent this program as well and think about what we're not doing currently or what we could be doing at a higher scale, with the funding increases. So I do see an opportunity there. Certainly also want to highlight, and thank you for bringing up the AIM implementation money. So just as a reminder to folks, we have long been offering non-competitive, consistent funding for AIM technical assistance. And 2 years ago, this committee, with support from the department, put our resources to work to develop an implementation cost share track, which I think is also instrumental in expansion of urban soil health and agricultural pursuits. So really, think that there are a lot of great program opportunities, and certainly we talked about District 8 Part B and C already. But yes, I think that will be part of the discussion as we expand our climate resilient farming program.
Brian, this is Don Strubick. I want to add that, and maybe you're likely aware of this, but our NRCS partners are already also taking a hard look at how they can get their programs to fit better in the urban environment. And I know there's one person on the soil science staff here in Area 1 that's been asked to look at their payment scenarios and to look at fit or no fit, or if there's gaps, to see if they can certainly get equipped to better fit in those underserved, underrepresented urban project areas.
That's a great point. I believe Blake is on the line. Blake, I don't know if you have an answer to the specific question or just want to talk a little bit about the urban agricultural program opportunities that are coming from USDA.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks for bringing that up. Yes, that is true. We are currently looking at our payment scenarios, especially on smaller acreage in urban areas, to where they can benefit from our program. As you guys know, our payment schedules are usually based on extents, acres, footage, each kind of thing. And a lot of times those things do not add up when you're working in smaller acreage stuff. So I think I know there's a big push from the national office level to get those numbers right for us, and hopefully we can benefit those urban communities moving forward. From an urban standpoint for NRCS, we're in the process of looking at adding additional urban conservationists throughout the state to target urban communities to help out with that. And also, through our programs, EQIP, Environmental Quality City Program, along with the Agriculture Management Assistance Program, ANA, we're able to address those underserved communities and smaller acreage producers around the state. Last year we did about $1.5 million on our urban ag initiative, which included our high tunnel initiative, and about 800,000 of that was located within the urban ag area. And we buffered that to include think it's 2 or 5 mile radius around our urban centers to be able to capture the small acreage producers that are outside of these urban centers, but are growing for those urban communities and schools. And so we were able to capture quite a few folks through our buffer that pulled in a lot of small acreage producers through that. So that is what NRCS has going on right now with on the urban front.
Thank you, Blake. I really appreciate that. Good question. Certainly instrumental in partnership and how we expand, our programs and opportunities in urban agriculture. I'm losing a little bit of function here for some reason. I'm not able to scroll through the chat, but I think Dustin, if you're still able to see it, we might have another question.
Yep. Yeah. There was a
Elizabeth
question
Henderson?
on whether or not we would need any additional legislation to expand soil health support to all landowners in New York State, including all state properties. So I'm not sure what the all state properties portion of that would mean, but would we need additional legislation at the state level to expand soil health support to all landowners in New York State? I guess that's a question for you. I don't know. I don't know that we would need any extra legislation to do what we're already doing, but.
That's a good question, and if I could just start, and then I'll give the mic over to others too. But one of the unique functions and features of the work that we do, and that's certainly the authority given to conservation districts through district laws, their ability to work on both private and public lands. So I think as we've demonstrated today, districts are incredibly adaptable and working both in a community urban center as well as our rural environment as well. So I think it's more about maybe how we define agriculture in some ways. I think that is something that we should be taking a look at, making sure that the program, the financial support that we have available is able to be used in different agricultural settings that we might not be accustomed to. So I think I like the idea of that needs assessment and a gap assessment to determine, how best we can continue to support soil health initiatives in an urban environment. I'm not sure that we need the new legislation just yet, but that is something certainly that, might come out of such a need or gap assessment.
Yeah, and there was a little expansion on that of state and municipal properties, meaning parks, public buildings, schools, and hospitals. I think you kind of covered that, saying as a district and as an organization, we can work on both public and private, whether it be parks, public buildings, schools, and things of that nature. That may not need to be expanded on to make that happen. We're kind of already doing that, and that's been shown in some of the presentations today. But Shino also agreed, and I think I agree as well with the definition of agriculture, because I know that has been a question that I've gotten from other districts, specifically when it comes to AEM, is what's considered a farm under the AEM umbrella, and utilizing the AEM funds for BMP implementation. Would a good sized community garden count as, is it a garden or is it a farm? Does it count under that umbrella? So maybe some clarification is part of the, something that'll come up in the needs assessment here for districts. So is anyone else come across that in needing, wondering what you can utilize the AEM funds for and on what kind of operations? Has that been a question? Like I said, I've gotten that question from a couple of counties and directed that towards Brian, but do we need some clarification?
This is Don Stribick. I would say yes. Alan Young, our ag planner, ag technician, had a concern about nonprofits. And my understanding is we are limited relative to using those AIM funding implementation resources on nonprofits. I believe he had a talk to Greg Albrecht about that.
Well, that doesn't mean that we can't still provide technical assistance.
Right.
Which is,
But our goal is to end up with hopefully some implementation and funding. Certainly the state aid dollars free us up in that relative to that issue.
Yes, and I believe NRCS projects are eligible on not-for-profits. Blake can correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But I know, again, the AEM funding that we have for BMP implementation is much, much more open to smaller projects, and the ranking within the county is very beneficial with projects like this that would probably not rank that well on a state level of funding competition.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would say we've directly come across that. Up in Warren County, we really have not been able to compete with many of the larger ag programs. And now that the Tier 4 cost share funding has come in, it has opened up so many more opportunities for us to do projects on farms on a much smaller level in Warren County. Again, our farms are a much smaller land base, but I would say they produce at a scale that's comparable to some much larger farms when it comes to economics and reaching communities.
Thank you, Nick. And while I've got you on the mic here, Ryan Cunningham had mentioned in the chat that you were working on your soil health specialist certification, and was asking if you could expand on that, maybe a little bit about what it is and why you're pursuing it, and how it will help you with carrying out programming, if you don't mind.
Yes, absolutely. I actually completed it last fall, the New York State Soil Health Specialist training. Joseph Amsili did a terrific job organizing it, certainly during a tough time. We were able to finish up in Ithaca last fall with an in-person workshop for 2 days. We were able to hear from some farmer panels, and they covered a huge variety of soil health topics. Again, everything from urban up through very large farms, which was really nice to see. So I think they were able to reach everybody in that program. And aside from that, I was able to make contacts with many organizations outside of the district community, which was really nice. So we formed some partnerships and some resources through that as well. So I think that was a huge benefit of the program. And it was nice. We were able to hear about different laws coming through, what different communities have to deal with when it comes to soil health on an urban side and a rural side. So I would highly recommend the program to anybody interested.
Great, thank you, Nick. One of the responses in the chat for the non-for-profit for NRCS is as long as they meet the income limitations for NRCS, whatever those are set at the time. I've never ran into anybody that had any issues with the income limitations, so I don't look into that too often. One thing that's come up several times was, basically dealing with the local municipality, especially with urban ag and possible permitting issues and things of that nature. I was wondering if that was something that maybe, the other folks at the state committee or next door to state committee in farmland and I'm sorry, Brian, I'm blanking on the division there.
Sure. Agricultural protection, as well as development, ag development also. I think both have a role in this. And Kelly Young, who was on earlier, I'm not sure if it's still on as the new ag development director. We've met to discuss, what they're going to be, putting out for urban agriculture and community grower support, and very interested in this discussion and continued discussions about, what those needs might be. But that is a good point and something that we should be looking at. And I think, Sheena, you had mentioned as well, and I can only venture to guess what kind of bureaucracy is involved when, trying to cite a, community garden at the ground level in New York City. But how is that supported, and how can that be addressed when working with a community leader?
So we have not been involved with community gardens at that level. We provide technical assistance after a community garden setup. And Grow NYC actually provides a lot of resources for community gardens. And there are other organizations that are, land trusts and whatnot that can provide that service. So we haven't been needing to provide that assistance. And if we do, then we have other organizations we can refer those community gardens to. But it is an arduous process, especially if you're, if you have a vacant lot in the neighborhood that's sitting vacant for a decade. You would think it should be easy enough to turn it into a community garden, but you have to really jump through hoops and some serious red tape to make it happen. But we do have resources within our communities.
That's a really good point. And I've heard a lot today as well about partnerships with Cornell Cooperative Extension, with community leaders and municipalities. And I think, Sheena, you just talked about yet another really important partnership, that there are groups out there and there's an organization behind, the establishment of, these community garden spaces where then the district can come in and provide that technical assistance and support once it's established. It's a good point.
Yeah, and my initial thought behind the question was whether or not there was a, we could somehow head off some of these possible issues with the towns by, having the other folks in your office there, maybe presenting at the annual meeting of towns and kind of giving them a little bit of information of how to, support these kind of endeavors, because they are beneficial. There's, are there really any negatives associated with something like this? I know, sometimes there's some negative connotations that don't really ever come true once the projects are implemented. Got a chat discussion about in Rochester, Department of Transportation has made land available for gardens, which, that's a partner that I hadn't thought of, possibly talking to your DOT, whether it's local or county-wide, and talking about that, getting space there. So I don't know how long that you want to go here, Brian. I think
I was just about to say I still have limited access to the chat for some reason. The whole right side of my screen just doesn't want to work right now. It might be a little bit tired. So I think maybe time for one more question or comment, and then we'll wrap it up.
I think we've answered all the chat questions. If there's anybody that wants to put their hand up or just unmute and ask a question, otherwise I think questions have been answered. Everybody's hungry, I think, Brian.
I think maybe. Well, all this discussion about urban agriculture, community gardens, and food, certainly, just again, I want to thank our panel today. Just tremendous work being done out there, and thank all of your staff and boards for their support and leadership. And this will just be the beginning of a discussion, certainly not the only one we're going to have in this regard. And I hope that that we're always listening and always ready to receive comments and thoughts, and look forward to hearing more about what your districts are doing and other districts across the state. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
I want to add the thanks to all the panel. A great discussion. Definitely a lot different than what we're used to talking about rural ag.
Absolutely.
Brian, would you explain a little bit on what we're going to do next, and then we'll do a vote for going to executive session?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. For those still on the line, we're going to break for lunch. While we break for lunch, our voting members, and if they invite me in as well, will be going into an executive session to discuss the appointment or reappointment of the committee chair and vice chair. We will reconvene at 1 o'clock for our regular business meeting. And at that, I'm hoping I have some functionality return here so that I can actually go into the breakout session. But so thank you to our meeting participants. And if you plan on joining us again this afternoon, please log back in at 1 o'clock, or you can keep your system running and we'll be back into the regular session at 1. So Dale, I think right now we would need a motion to go into executive session.
Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
So moved.
Okay, we got a motion and seconded. We'll go to voting. Erica?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Scott?
Yes.
Okay, we're going into executive session. Approved. Of course, you're invited, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
So how do you want to proceed with
All
this?
right, so Bethany's going to assign a breakout room for us, and you should see a box appear in the center of your screen that will ask to join the breakout session.
Yeah, so bear with me, everybody. I got to create the assignments so everyone can access it. So, and I just want to make sure I have everyone.
Thank you, Bethany.
Yep.
While she's doing that, Brian, I was having the same problem. I think due to the number of participants, we really got it loaded up heavy today.
I think so. I think my system got a little tired, and I was even trying to change my virtual background a little bit because that takes up a lot of usage. It wouldn't let me do that. And then I lost capacity to scroll through the participant list of the chat. But luckily, I still was able to hear the discussion and see everybody. But
So I've got everybody assigned. I'm going to go ahead and hit start breakout sessions. So when you see on the screen the pop-up box come up, click the join now button, and then you guys should all be in one room together. And then when you're ready to leave, just leave, and then we'll be able to end the breakout session. One thing we did notice, one thing we did notice just before I hit go, when you do come back to this main meeting room, the system will automatically mute your line. So just keep that in mind if you need to say something later on.
Bethany, will you stay on as well in the regular session just to make sure that we're in our own virtual room and nobody can hear us?
Yes, I will.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so I'm having a problem. I'm going to log off and log back in. It's not letting me click on it.
Well, let's try. Let me try one more time. I'm going to remove you and
try
then
one more
re-add
time.
you.
I might. Okay, thank you.
Did anything come up?
Yeah, my system is pretty frozen right at the moment. I'm gonna end this call. I'm gonna log back in, and I think it'll work then. And just stand by, and you'll have to reassign me, I think, again.
Okay.
I see Dale's lips moving, but I don't hear him.
Scott, I don't believe you have entered this. It looks like you're not entered into the breakout session.
I clicked join.
Okay.
My name's up. I don't have a camera, so my name's up on the screen. And
Okay,
I see Dave
all right.
and Dale and Eric and so everybody put Brian.
Is are their lines muted, perhaps?
Stephanie, I don't see Scott in the main room anymore, but I think I now I can click on stuff, so I think you can. So okay.
Okay. Well, I just assigned you. Scott was having trouble hearing people.
I see everybody, but I don't hear anybody.
Yeah, I just let Brian know that it may be because you're connected to the audio with your phone, and I'm having a hard time figuring out how to get your audio into the breakout session.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to let Brian know just that he's aware. Scott, if you want to try to, if you're able, you're on the WebEx platform,
yes.
right? Because you can see everyone. If you disconnect your phone line, well, before you do that, up at the top screen, there's an option that you can click audio and video. And if you hit switch audio, there may be an option where you can have the system actually call your phone number.
Up at the top?
Yep, there's you see at the top menu, there's File, Edit, Share, View, Audio and Video.
I got a meeting info in the upper left corner. Then I've got a increased video size and a layout. See, it's breakout session 1. Down at the bottom, it's connect audio, start video, share.
Connect audio. Why don't you try to hit connect audio?
Use computer for audio.
Give that a try and see how that works.
Can't connect
you
audio
might have
to audio. Try again.
Oh, darn.
Audio connection. Not connected to audio. I've got to use computer for audio. Call me at phone number.
Yeah, can you do that option? Call me at, you can enter in your phone number.
Sure. So I have to hang up now then?
Yeah, I would give that a try.
Gotta get a second?
Second.
Erica? Dave?
Yes.
Darren?
Yep.
Scott?
Yes.
Great. Okay, approved. We're back in session. Thank you.
Okay. Dale, do you want to explain what we decided while we were in executive session before we move on?
Oh, again, if we have to. We are going to, we had a long discussion on how we're going to proceed, chair and vice chair and the future and what it holds for each of us, and a lot of changes going on in members' lives and everything, or voting members' lives. And so we are going to maintain our present as myself as chair and Dave as vice chair, and we're going to revisit in July. So we have several of the voting members are in new positions in lives, entering new positions in lives, and a lot of change. And so we want to get through all that and look for the future goals and how we want to have leadership in the committee going forward in a few years. Dave and I are probably going to step off within a couple of years. We're going to probably looking at looking at replacement a couple of years, but we wanted to get started ahead of time. I'm going to be 70 in a couple of years, and Dave's got a few years on me. So we're looking at
83.
83, yeah. They're looking at stepping down over time. I'm pushing 20 years here, not quite, but I will be by 70 years shows up probably. But love this place. I think it's time for new leadership and fresh blood. And so we're working toward that, but it's a few year goal. So just to bring everybody up to date so everybody understands. Thank you. You got anything to say, Brian?
No, Dale, you covered everything. Thank you so much. Thank you all voting members for your service to the committee, to conservation across the state. It was a good discussion.
Great. Next on the agenda, Bethany with the Tech Committee.
Yeah, so I will kick things off with a quick update and then kind of pass the mic over to Ron Bush. But back in January, on January 25th, we had our first Technical Advisory Committee meeting of 2022. We, at that meeting, provided updates to the committee regarding the status of our Agnon Point Source and CRF RFPs, and rounded out our meeting discussion with kind of a brainstorming session on future TAC meeting topics. One item that I did want to share today with the state committee that came out of that discussion was the idea to include BMP featurettes, if you will, as part of our TAC meetings to highlight various projects that were funded through our programs and showcase the best management practices that are able to be implemented. And this would be essentially a virtual BMP tour. In the past, we've been able to get our Technical Advisory Committee out into the field to actually see live and in person the projects that have been able to be supported through our programs. Unfortunately, those have been a little bit difficult to organize with the pandemic and everything. So we wanted to kind of build in a virtual BMP highlight to our meetings. So that we're going to be working on, but the majority of our agenda focused on a discussion regarding the development of a new best management practice system that at this point we are titling the short-term manure storage collection and transfer system. So at this point, I'm going to let Ron kind of take over and discuss I guess, what was discussed at our technical advisory committee meeting and share some next steps.
Thanks, Bethany. Just give me a second here. So normally when we report back from the technical advisory committee, we're looking for motions from the state committee on new projects, new policies, edits to existing work. And today, we're not looking for a motion to adopt any new practices. We're simply just providing a quick update here on some of the work that we've been doing. So what we're working on is a new BMP system called the Short-Term Manure Collection and Transfer System. And this BMP system is similar to our standard waste storage and transfer system, except that we're trying to provide an environment where we can combine two AM tier plans, the 3A Farmstead Plan and the 3A Nutrient Management Core Plan. Those would be the minimum level of planning. Of course, you could do a full 590 plan or CNMP plan. But what our goal here is to provide some of the smaller farms across the state the ability to clean up farmsteads, as well as introduce and work on some really good agronomic practices out on the farm, which is, you know, some of the key stuff that we find in the Nutrient Management 590 standard. So I'm just breezing over the high points today. We're going to circle back with the TAC and look at some other considerations to kind of fine tune the system, but just highlighting what we're working on here. There's a picture here that shows what might be one example of how this shapes up if it's adopted. And it's essentially a small manure storage facility or transfer system that allows folks to transfer and store 45 days of manure. And we set a 45-day threshold just to, well, actually for several reasons. One, it aligns with several of the key crop productions like hay fields, your 30, 35-day rotations and cuttings, as well as avoiding those major storm events that show up in a monthly basis. So if you could get, you know, just at a minimum 2 weeks out of a major storm event or a forecasted event, there's a tremendous benefit there. The other thing is it allows folks to clean up the manure and store it in a location that doesn't have resource concerns. You know, the traditional manure pilings that happen along farms or transfer areas. So that's kind of our goal here. What you're seeing now, and this is kind of the highlight, is we can do, you know, full planning and still use this system or the other one. But what we're proposing is that other level of planning, the AM Tier 3A farmstead, paired with the Nutrient Management Core Plan, which the state committee adopted several years ago. The NM Core Plan is really just a subset of the key and basic principles in the 590 plan. Excuse me. This screen here just shows that the nutrient, well, our goal here is to go out to every farm and look at the manure sources, the quantities that are being produced. We're going to take samples of that manure and test it and analyze it for its NP and K along with other nutrient content, and start looking at those sources and pair it up with existing practices on the farm and set up a nutrient management plan based on past manure, current manure, past crop rotations, future rotations, and fertilizer programs. These are all based on soil tests and the Cornell nutrient guidelines. So we're really going to bring those tools out to the farm and look at those fertilizer rates, sources, timing, and methods of application. And one of the key aspects too is this might be the first time a farm has had their fields analyzed for nearby highly sensitive areas, gullies, considerations for neighboring wells, or even looking down into the ground at shallow soils over bedrock or karst topography. So planners are going to go out there and meet farmers where they're at. That's kind of the key principle here is we might have farms that have never worked with the district before. They might be developing their farm and not quite sure what direction they're going in. They could be transitioning to another generation, and they may not have the financial resources to do what might be a traditional 6-month or longer storage. So we can get some good BMPs out on the farm, clean up the farmsteads, and see where they're at out in their fields, and then introduce a nutrient management plan with some really good foundational BMPs. And planners will look at all aspects of applications and systems that will fit with the equipment that they have, or introduce new options. So kind of just to sum it all up for today's meeting, why are we doing this? There's several reasons. We just went over the AEM portion, but the other one is right now to do a waste storage facility, you need a CNMP. That requires an AIM certified planner or an NRCS certified planner. And as we look throughout the state, there's a lot of districts that don't have those. They might not have the financial resources to set those up. So there might be a bottleneck on that level of planning, and they take a lot of time, a lot of money, like I said, and they might be overwhelming to producers that it's their first time interacting with the district or a private planner. So this allows more of a, meet them in stride and see where they're at and not overwhelm them, and allows you to pair, different flavors of AEM Tier 3A plans together. And the NM Core plan, what we're kind of playing around with is that certified crop advisors would be able to assess these farms and set up these plans for folks out there, which many districts have certified crop advisors on staff, or their neighboring county might have one that they can work along with. So, we just wanted to update the state committee and folks on this project. It's been ongoing for years, and we've just kind of been smoothing it out over time and seeing how it works, and what changes need to be made in our programs and how to set up this system so that it works for folks out there. So, I think we can have a minute or two for questions if there are any, or we can move on. Bethany.
Yeah, I'll just add that, we're going to continue to develop this system, and most likely continue to talk about it at our future TAC meetings. Next one tentatively scheduled for April.
Questions, anyone?
Thank you, Bethany and
Brian.
Just want to thank Ron and Bethany and for that. And my question was going to be next steps, and I think we just covered that. So that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda is a CRF with Jennifer.
Thank you, Dale. I just have a brief update today. I don't have any amendments for the state committee to consider, so just a brief update that round 6 is released. I have been receiving a lot of questions and interest, so that's a good sign. There is up to $8 million available for the 3 tracks of manure storage cover and flare, water management systems, and healthy soils and soil health projects. So the RFP is out and posted, and the applications are due March 28th. This Thursday, we do have, Bethany and I are holding a joint webinar to discuss both RFPs for districts to join in, and that'll be this Thursday at 10 a.m. So any districts that are interested and didn't receive the info, please reach out. And that's really the only update I have for CRF right now. I do want to say thanks for the feedback and in ideas that came across this morning for including some urban ag or how to expand CRF. So that was a helpful discussion. I was listening in on that and taking notes. So, but that's all I have for CRF unless there are any questions.
Questions, anyone? Okay, good.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Dale, just real quick on the Climate Action Council. They've taken a little bit of a winter break. The next meeting now is scheduled for early March. I don't have the exact date on me. Again, back at the December 20th meeting, the Climate Action Council voted to release the draft scoping plan for public comment, and we will certainly drop the information for that in the minutes so that folks know where to go to comment on that draft scoping plan. But the Climate Action Council's website has a really good form and format for commenting on certain chapters or the entire scoping plan. So we are in the public comment period scheduled to end April 1st, I believe, 120 days from the release.
Could you refresh on me the time frame of the Action Council, what the proposed time frame was?
Sure. So they voted to release the draft for public comment. It wasn't necessarily an endorsement or approval of the content itself. So as the year goes by here, 2022, they'll be collecting comments from the public and also continuing to discuss and deliberate on issues as they've identified through the process, so that the scoping plan is out for final and out for release and guides our efforts moving forward as of January of 2023.
Okay, good. Yeah, I forgot. Thank you.
Yep.
We're up with Bethany and the Agnon Point Source Program.
Great, thank you. So I'll quick start with a program status, and then if it's okay, I'll just roll that into my round 28 update before we get into my list of amendments for the Agnon Point Source Program. I wanted to provide a recap of some items, I guess, that we completed in 2021 for the Agnon Point Source Program. So last year, we closed a total of 42 contracts, approved a total of 28 time extensions and 3 landowner changes. We were also able to award round 27 of the Agnon Point Source Program. And currently, all of the districts that were awarded funds are working on their plans of work. And actually, we have almost all of the plans of work have been submitted to the state committee. So we are now in the process of developing contracts for each one of those projects and working to kind of get those through the system so we can get them executed as soon as possible. Jennifer mentioned that the round 6 RFP was released, and we also did a joint release at the same time for round 28 of the Agnon Point Source Program. Those 2 programs were announced on January 31st. And Jennifer already mentioned that we're going to be hosting a webinar tomorrow to discuss our RFPs. But for the Agnon Point Source Program, any questions that districts may have regarding the RFP or potential eligible projects, those need to be submitted to me in writing by April 4th. And applications for round 28 are due on May 2nd. Before I head into my list of amendments, are there any questions on any of that information?
Bethany, can you repeat closeouts to extensions for 2021? I missed that.
Yeah, so In 2021, we completed 42 contract closeouts and approved 28 time extensions as well as 3 landowner change amendments.
Thank you.
Okay. So hopefully what you can see clearly on the screen is the list of amendments for this month's meeting of the state committee. We do have, or we did receive, I should say, one staff approved amendment that was submitted by Wyoming County to document a change in ownership of a participating farm. That amendment was approved by Victor DiGiacomo. But we also have a number of time extension amendments that were submitted for consideration at this month's meeting. This summary sheet, as well as the full amendment packet, were provided to all the voting members in advance of this meeting. So in lieu of going through and reading each amendment request, I'm just going to list out the county and what they are requesting. And then the voting members, if there's any questions or discussion that needs to be had, we can do it after I list out that particular amendment. So our first amendment was submitted by Cattaraugus County for a round 24 contract, and they are looking for a 1-year extension.
Don't have any questions or comments? Motion to approve, please.
So move.
Second?
Second.
We'll go to voting. Erica?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye. Aye.
Approved. Next one, please.
Okay, our next amendment was submitted by Onondaga County Soil and Water for a round 24 contract, and they are seeking a 1-year time extension.
Questions, comments, anyone? Motion to approve. Second?
Second.
Second.
Go to voting. Erica?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. Thank you. Next.
Okay. Our next amendment is was also submitted by the Onondaga County Soil and Water Conservation District for a second round 24 contract. On this one, they are also seeking a 1-year time extension.
Questions, comments, anyone? Approve.
Moved.
Second?
Second.
We'll go to voting. Erica?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Approved. Next, please.
All right. Our next amendment was submitted by the Madison County Soil and Water Conservation District for a round 23 contract, and they are also looking for a 1-year time extension.
Questions, comments, anyone? I'll make one comment. We do seem to have a lot of problems getting contractors. It seems to be getting worse. A little bit worrisome, especially if we are going to be looking at more projects in the future. Motion to approve, please.
So move.
Second?
I'll second it.
Go to voting. Erica?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you. Next.
We have a second time extension request from Madison County Soil and Water for a round 23 contract, and they are also seeking a 1-year time extension.
Questions, comments, anyone? Motion to approve, please.
So moved.
Second.
And second. Thank you. Go to voting. Erica?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you. Next.
Okay, next one is from Essex County Soil and Water Conservation District for a round 24 contract, and they are seeking a 1-year time extension.
I have a question for Ryan. Do you think it's going to be all right, get through on this one, Ryan? It seems like they haven't quite started it or not, or it isn't plan. Have they got any type of planning done on it yet?
Yeah, hey Dale. The planning has begun. They don't have designs in place, and I think they've just taken a few steps back from the pandemic. It is a rotational grazing system, and it'll be sort of imperative that they get it in because it's a small farm. They're kind of relying on this system to go in. So stream crossings, fencing, alternative water. Essex County is another one of those counties that really has trouble finding contractors. A lot of times they get maybe 1 bid, possibly 2, and they're overpriced. So a lot going into it. They're going to give them 1 more year to try to get it done. And if they can't, they really can't. They might have to pull out.
Okay, good. Thank you for the information. Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Wow, go to voting. Erica?
Aye.
Dave?
Yes.
Darren?
Aye.
Scott?
Yes.
Approved. Thank you. Next.
And this will be our last amendment, and it was submitted by the Suffolk County Soil and Water Conservation District for a round 24 project, and they are seeking not quite a full year time extension on this one. Looks like about 9 months.
This one looks like it's very closely related to COVID problems. Any comments, questions, anyone? Motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. We'll vote. Erica?
Aye.
Yep. Hear me, Dave?
Aye.
Good. Darren?
Aye.
Scott?
Yes.
Approved. Thank you.
That is all I have for the committee today regarding the Agnon Point Source Program. Thank you all so much for your consideration of those amendments.
Anyone have any questions for Bethany on any of the Agnon Point Source? Any? We'll go to staff voting advisory reports. Start, Erica.
Notes I'm just trying to pull up. So just wanted to share out a couple updates from American Farmland Trust. Starting at 1 today, we had a convening come together that was really geared towards the ag service industry to share some of the latest work around women in agriculture. And so I've spoken a few times at the committee about some of the Women for the Land work, which is really supporting women landowners and farmers to think about the plans for working with farmers that lease their land to, or even coming up with their own conservation plan. So this is really an extension of that work. we'll have hopefully more information coming out soon too, as well, as part of the demonstration farm network that folks on this call have been involved with and have mentioned as well in the Genesee River watershed, seeing some really promising results about soil health and kind of increasing biomass production, making more kind of other progress that's happening really for planting green and doing some of these demonstrations. So these are the projects that are showing both the economic and environmental impact. So we're putting together a couple more case studies. I think Table Rock Farm is actually going to be the next one, which was the Leopold Conservation Award winner last year. So that's kind of coming together, that analysis, and looking forward to sharing. And I'll just mention this in the executive session, but I'll just mention here as well that my role at American Farmland Trust is changing. I'll still be in New York, so still stay on the committee, but I'm moving from New York Regional Director to one of our national programs to be Director of the Farms for New Generation, which is looking at transitioning land, thinking about land access, but also what are the practices that are on that land. So just wanted to provide an update too. And that's all I've got, Dale.
Thank you. Dave, you got anything?
I haven't. No, I haven't got anything, Dale.
Thanks. Darren?
Not much other than Farm Bureau legislative days are coming up. We're hoping to do it in person this year, but it's going virtual again. And unfortunately, that means we can't do our Taste of New York again this year, which is always a big hit. But it is what it is. So, but no, that's about all I have.
Yeah, I used to love the Taste of New York. Great,
Oh,
great,
yeah.
great night. Scott, you got anything to report?
Well, legislative days will be virtual over a 5-day period, March 1st through the 3rd and the 8th and the 11th. We'll certainly be asking and thanking our legislators for the support for the governor's proposed budget. And the annual meeting is set for Tuesday through Thursday, October 18th through the 20th at Casanova again.
Thank you. Turn it over to you, Brian.
Dale, can I just ask you really quickly to inform the group on the webinar that you took part in last week?
Well, it's I was asked to participate in a webinar where we where my position was discussing covers and flares from a farmer's standpoint and the effect of them, the benefit of them, cost of them, lifespan of them. The panel was including one of the members of the company out of South Carolina, Environmental Fabrics, that does all the installation around the country and around the world. They've done them in Africa and Europe and everywhere. And it was very good, enlightening experience for me, and hearing all the other speakers on all the benefits of why and costs and the concerns on how we're going to be able to ramp up the program, the installation the companies due to the, looks like, especially in New York, the future need and what the funding may end up being. And it does look like we do have great possibility of the companies being able to install a lot more. It was, I think we're going to see this in CRF, that this is going to be a huge push to get covers and flares in place. And I think it's going to take a lot of work by the districts, probably be one of the largest programs in place at some point. I think it has that potential, and it's going to be an educational piece for farmers, because it pretty well always encompasses separation of manure. So you got a huge total project, multi-year project. So we'll, I think it's one of the, it could well be the single largest program in our future over for a number of years. We'll wait and see, but it looks like it's going to go that way. But the benefits are enormous. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Dale. I appreciate that. Not usual when I put you on the spot.
and ask you to present something, but really appreciate that. And just for everybody's information, this was part of a webinar series that Jenny Whiteman from Cornell University has been putting on for our conservation district for farmers across the state, talking about all of the greenhouse gas mitigation or reduction opportunities on farms and across, rural and natural working lands. And it was very well attended, and really appreciate your input and all that, Dale.
I'll add one
Okay.
thing to it. It's one of the few webinars or anything I participated in where there was worldwide attendance. Europe, Africa, all over was participating. I was shocked at that. Go ahead.
Good thing you didn't know that till afterwards. You might have been a little nervous. You did great. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to run down through our list of advisory members, and just want to thank everybody for hanging on today for a longer than normal virtual meeting. Still had 40 participants there after the break, so thank you all. I'll start off with, I'm not sure if anybody is still on from Ag and Markets. Does Ag and Markets have any updates? I'll provide one quick update. I know if Pete Lopez was still on the line, he would talk about the Farmland Protection Working Group. That working group started their work back in January, and have had, or December, had 2 meetings of the full panel, and are also having some discussions across agencies on what will be a work product from that, and that is a report on farmland protection efforts in relation to solar siting. So it's been really interesting to engage with that group, and they continue to do really good work. Okay, next, Cornell Cows. Anybody on from Cornell Cows have an update for us? Okay, I think that was the obligatory 7-second pause, or did I hear anybody? Okay, how about Cornell Cooperative Extension? Okay, CDEA. Dustin?
Yeah, I'm still here, Brian.
All right.
Thank you for letting us participate in the meeting, especially this morning, and act as a little bit of a moderator. That was a great discussion, I think. And I wanted to let everybody know that our Water Quality Symposium, I've mentioned it before, it's virtual still this year, and registration deadline is Friday. So please sign up, register early. Employees from the conservation districts are free, students are free, and unlimited access for everybody else is $25. So fairly reasonable, even if you're not an employee of a conservation district. And then we'll also have the award ceremony held that week as well. And we've got our RFP out for districts to apply or submit a plan for operating our 4-hour online erosion sediment control course and handling the logistics behind that. But that's been sent out to all districts. So hopefully districts are putting together proposals for us for that. That would be great. And I believe that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dustin. Quick question. The $25 registration fee I saw also includes recordings after the fact. Is that just for the class you register for, or is that recording for any class?
My understanding is pretty much any class, if you request a recording, you'll get it. I believe that's what we did last year. But that would be a final question for Caitlin.
Okay. Well, that's huge. That's huge, because I know there are so many classes over the course of 2 weeks that folks would love to attend, but unfortunately, won't be able to attend them all. So to have that ability to go back and after the fact, I think that's great. Thank you so much for offering that at such an excellent price.
Problem.
Okay. Thank you, Dustin. Any questions or comments for Dustin? Okay, DEC.
Hi, Brian. This is Sarah. I'll just mention that the public comment period for the CAFO general permit is up Friday. So if anybody has any comments, get them in the next couple days.
Okay, thank you. How are they looking so far? A lot of comments, sir?
I have received one set of comments.
Oh, okay.
I am expecting many, many on Friday. So we'll see.
No doubt. No doubt. Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else from DEC? Okay, Department of Health.
Hey, Brian, this is Paul. Just want to mention that Morgan and I attended January Ag Conference. It's an annual conference in New York City watershed that is organized by Cornell Cooperative Extension in Delaware County. And fortunately, once again, it was a Zoom conference, like all of them are these days. So I didn't really get a chance to talk to anybody in person. There were a couple of really neat presentations about soil health and grazing systems, which was really fascinating. Another about grazing in silviculture or shrubby areas using goats and cows and various animals to come through. So which is also very, very interesting. Something I know nothing about, goats grazing in forests. So that was very interesting. And I have one more thing. It's actually a question for Dale and anyone else who was on the conference regarding covers and flares. And that is were anaerobic digesters talked about, or is really the focus on covers and flares these days?
The discussion was primarily just covers and flares. Really not looking at anaerobic digesters in and of itself, meaning to, I think the issue there is that due to the cost of digestion, and you're actually creating more methane with digestion, where the covers and flares are just trying to eliminate the digestion that is created and an almost natural a little bit more because of the cover will heat up the manure some. So it was more really just about covers and flares.
Okay, thanks, Dale. That's all I've got. I don't know if Morgan's on. She like to say anything?
Hi everyone, I'm here. I don't really have anything to add at this time, but if for folks that are interested, I can actually put in the chat the link for the Catskill Ag Conference. All of the presentations and sessions were recorded and put on YouTube, and the website link I will put in has all those links.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that.
No problem.
Thanks, Morgan.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Morgan. Department of State.
I don't think I have a lot today. I'll say that the Owasco non-element plan and the Seneca Chica non-element plan are wrapping up here pretty soon. If I was betting, I'd say the Seneca Chica will be finished first. They have a tentative date of mid-March for the draft. And the Skinny Atlas is getting started soon. You know, the plan is to rope in the soil and water conservation districts as well. So they should be expecting probably some outreach here for a first waterfront advisory committee meeting, probably the next month or so. So that's my big news. The recent CFAs, we're funding a update to their watershed plan for Canisius Lake. We also funded a project sponsored by the town of Fayette, but it is being driven in part by the Seneca Soil and Water Conservation District. They're doing a road ditch assessment. They're developing a methodology and a database to house assessments and implementation data, in addition to some outreach and education for the program. I think that's about it.
Well, thank you, Kate. That's great news about the 9 element plans, and really appreciate
your partnership, both here at the committee level and also with districts, working with those municipalities and local leaders on the 9-element plans.
Of course.
Okay. Thank you. Student ESF. Is Steve Shaw still with us? Okay, I know that Blake had to step off as well, but not sure if anybody else from USDA is on and have a report. Okay, so that includes advisory members. I'm going to move over to staff now. I think for the sake of time, I'm not going to run through the whole staffing list, but if you have a report to give to the committee, please feel free to take your phone off mute and go ahead. I know that a few of you have got some items to present on.
So Brian, I'll go first. Just to update, not to be outdone by Dustin. We're offering a comprehensive nutrient management planning for agricultural environmental management training. This is the training that is required to become an AIM certified planner. We usually offer this every 2 years. With COVID, this is the 3rd year swing, and our partners down at Cornell have set us up with a room. So we're going to try a virtual session as well as in person if it works out. That date is April 5 through the 7th. And registration is due by Friday, March 11th. This offering was sent out with the CDA Water Quality Symposium listings as well as to some of our other listservs. But if you do not have that, feel free to email me. I'll put my email in the chat and we can get that information to you if it's necessary. But I just wanted to offer that out to the group.
Yes, thank you, Ron. Appreciate that very much. More staff updates?
Sure.
Yeah.
This is Greg. A couple updates for districts and all on the line. You probably saw on February 7th and a little bit before that, there was a blast about the 3rd annual AIM Leopold Conservation Award. That is out in play, and we're really hoping for another good set of worthy applicants. We know there are thousands in the state, so it'd be really, really great to see a large applicant pool. We've had awesome luck in the last 2 years since we've had that partnership with the Sand County Foundation to have kind of a unique setup with, a significant local state program partnering with the Sand County Foundation to offer that AIM Leopold Award, and I want to make the 3rd even better than the first 2, where we had Sangley Farm from Suffolk County and the Suffolk County District and Table Rock Farm from Wyoming County and Wyoming County District honored and representing a good pool of applicants for each of those years. Dustin, maybe here's a challenge for you and me and maybe Caitlin to work on, is if we could get, several applications from each of the AEA regions or district divisions areas. That would be, I think, representative of the effort that districts and farmers are doing out there, to show their environmental management, farm viability, community engagement, interaction, and otherwise, leadership in the ag and food system in New York. So maybe we can talk offline on ways to collaborate toward, here's the punchline, a May 1st deadline for those applications.
Yeah, no problem. I like the May 1st. We got plenty of time. So we're not dropping it on somebody, with a week's deadline. So that'd be good. Certainly something that can be mentioned, and we'll mention it at the Water Quality Symposium as well during the annual meeting. There would be a good idea.
That's great, Dustin. Thank you. And I should also mention, and just as a note, also, it did go out on February 7th to districts with the application. and it's also in the AIM award section of SharePoint for districts. And I should absolutely note that Judy Luttrell was an awesome steward of this, you know, the worker part of this in the department, partnering with Sand County, and she's moved on to another position. So I'm going to try to fill those big shoes in working with Lance from the Sand County Foundation and our applicants. The only other update, Brian, I wanted to give is to thank districts and the regional state committee coordinators for all their work in buttoning up their AIM 16 projects. That deadline for submitting those final reports and closeout packages is February 28th. Really enjoying the packages that have come in and all the good work that's been done in a, you know, try at a new type of AIM-based program, as was discussed during the panel earlier. Thanks for that. And if you have any questions, certainly regional coordinators are fielding a lot, and I'm here as backup as well. Brian, thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you very much. More to come on AIM-based 16 results and outcomes. Really looking forward to digging in on the data once it's all in and retrievable.
For sure.
Okay. More staff reports. Anybody else? Okay. Again, just one last call for staff reports. All right. Well, thank you all. And next, districts on the line. Anything to report? Any questions to ask of the committee, or anything to address with the committee? Any conservation district partners on the line? Okay. Well, thank you. And I want to thank all the conservation districts that served as panelists today. And I noticed that there was quite a few districts and partners on the line this morning, and I'm sure lots of good notes were taken, and look forward to continued discussions in that regard. How about anybody from the public? Anybody from the public who is still on the line have anything to address with the committee? Go right ahead and take your phone off mute. Okay, hearing no comments. Dale, back to you for next meeting.
Thanks, Brian. We got, it should be March 15th. Are there any conflicts from voting members, March 15th, next meeting?
I am unavailable that whole week. I'll be.
Okay for it.
You think, Darren?
I think I'm all right.
Scott?
Looks good at this point.
So the staff debated whether we need to have a March meeting. I know with the symposium, you know, we have some responsibilities there as well, as many of our districts do. But we thought it might be something we should at least keep on the calendar in case there are amendments or other needs that we need to address, but likely would be a quicker and more of a business type meeting for March.
Okay. Yeah, well, if
Erica,
it comes down.
sorry, you say you have a conflict that week? Okay.
I'm out the whole week.
I think we'll still have a quorum if it's okay, if we need to keep the date, and stand by. If we don't have anything that's pressing, you know, we'll cancel and move for April.
Yeah, that'd be good. All right, we'll shoot for the 15th of March and tentative meeting date anyway. If nothing is big, we'll skip March, but we'll see how that goes. We'll get as we get closer.
So we did get all of our reports in yesterday on time, and we'll be going through those, and we'll likely have some state aid reporting, and want to be talking about performance measures here pretty quickly. But March might not be the best time for that. We'll keep that in mind, though.
Well, you might have better budget updates in the April meeting then too.
This is true.
All right. Does anyone else have anything further they'd like to bring up? Meeting is adjourned. Great meeting. Thank you, everyone, for participating.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.